Hello, fellow snows, hoes, ugly blokes, and millennial jokes, and welcome to the Bastards of Gaming podcast, episode number 4. I'm your host with the most, Xizor, joined by my co-host, the maple syrup to my French toast, the Michelangelo to my Leonardo, SynthR.
You know what I like to do sometimes? I really love going in an elevator, and as I'm going down, I just scream as loud as I can, hoping that someone's on the other side hearing me go by like, ah.
I love those internet videos where, like, people are doing random shit in the elevator when the doors open and people don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good. Because I don't know, I'd like to see something like that. I'd get in on it. You know what I mean? You know how people are just like either scared or worried that someone's going to see them join in? I would just fucking join in.
Yeah, like the ones where people just run out of the elevator like something's attacking them, and then everyone follows suit. This week, we've been getting some more hype, some more momentum behind the podcast. A lot of people checking it out. Things are looking good, and we've had, some people are a little bit skeptical in the beginning. They were talking about, I wasn't sure about you guys. I wasn't sure you were as hardcore as you say you are, but now that they've had a few episodes to listen, they're like, no, you guys are totally fucking legit. I had one guy told me, he's like, I was listening to upwards of like 10 gaming podcasts a week, but now I'm just going to listen to your show because it's basically all the content I need as far as video games is going to be in your podcast. So that was cool that, he gave up all these long-term, people and creators that he was listening to for us. And, some people are reaching out. They're asking, how can I get involved with this thing? Because, I want to be involved with the next greatest thing to happen to video game podcasting. And, we have basically 3 rules as far as how to get involved. The first one is you need at least 25 years experience with video games. I mean, anything less, it's like, can you really speak authoritatively about video games unless you have at least 25 years experience? So that cuts out a lot of the bullshit right up front. And then the next thing is just like, I mean, do you have a PlayStation 4 Pro, a Xbox One X, a Nintendo Switch, and a gaming PC with at least a 1080 Ti in it? Because, I mean, how are you going to talk about modern video games if you don't have all the modern video game devices? And, we kind of want you to have all the retro consoles too. I mean, because we need you to be able to reference everything. If we're like, hey, we're going to talk about, Quake 4 on the 360 this week, and you're like, oh, well, I can't play that. Then what are you going to contribute to this epic gaming podcast that knows everything about everything? So that's another barrier to entry for a lot of people. But the third thing that we really want people to do is we give you a baby goat, and it's recently been taken from its mother, and we want you to give it a name and raise it and care for it and treat it like a part of your family. We want you to put all your hard work and love into this baby goat. And then after a year, we're going to come to you and we're going to ask you to kill it. Just straight up. You're going to have to kill the goat. Maybe even skin it and eat it. I don't know. We haven't really decided on that. It's going a bit too far, but that's the kind of level of dedication we're looking for here. We want to know that you're going to sacrifice everything to be a part of the Bastards of Gaming, because that's what we're here for. If I come up to you and I say, choose between you and your wife, I expect you to just pick the podcast, pick Bastards of Gaming. It's like my favorite quote from Robert De Niro in the movie Heat, where he says, don't let yourself get attached to anything you aren't willing to walk away from in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat coming around the corner. And that's just kind of a code I live by. It's just kind of a mantra that I carry with me through life. And, I'm just kind of bringing that into the Bastards of Gaming here. So, if you want to be involved and you can meet all those qualifications, then we'll hear what you got to say. But speaking of bringing new people on, we got a special guest this week, longtime friend of the show, old TMA alumni, all around great dude. So I'm here to welcome to the podcast for the first time, Brian Evil.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm ready to leave my wife and eat goats if need be.
Yeah, when I came to Brian about the goat thing, this is how I knew he was hardcore. He said, give me 2 goats.
I'll eat them both together. At the same time, I don't care. I'll do it.
Guys, I feel underqualified. I haven't done these things.
Shh, don't tell people that.
Oh.
It's not that we have to do those things. We're the creators of this. We just make other people do it. You know,
that's
just
right.
That's kind of how this works. We don't have to do this shit.
Okay, well, I'm glad Brian did. Good job, Brian.
Hey, thanks. If it makes you feel better, I'm prepared to eat a goat on your behalf.
Okay,
I want to
do.
watch you. I want you to live stream it on Facebook.
That's disgusting.
All right.
Okay, so I just want to talk about how Brian Evil and I go back, way back, because we recently got together after playing Heroes of the Storm, and we're in the process of penning a buddy sitcom about Diablo and Deckard Cain from the Diablo universe. And I actually wrote a song for the actual theme song for it, and Brian hasn't heard it yet because I just finished. So this is brand new. I'm going to sing it for you. You guys ready?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here it is. Diablo and Cain together again, just two bodies being more than mere men. One's a primeval, the other's just old. Stay a while and listen to the stories told. How's that?
Wow. I'm floored. I think it's amazing.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I'm moved by this.
I think
it even rhymed.
Yeah, it's a legit theme song, because you remember back in the 80s and early 90s, the theme song is what made the show. Nobody gave a shit about the show. They watched it for the theme song.
I still think about, intros to old 80s and 90s TV shows all the time. Fucking, I love a good jingle, man. Good jingle.
And there it is. Blizzard, call me up. I'll do the rest of it for you, man. Let's do it.
All right, so the topic of the week this week is going to be video game music appreciation. Now, we realized once getting into it here that we were going to have to break this out into multiple parts. So it looks like we're going to be doing at least 2 parts right now. But in part 1 this week, we're going to talk about, games using music in innovative ways, orchestrated pieces, licensed soundtracks, and heavily atmospheric tunes. And then next week, we'll be delving into other related topics, specifically electronica, industrial, RPG soundtracks, and retro games. And then we'll move into what we're playing this week. The big game to talk about is going to be Anthem, which I played. And then after that, we'll move into the Q&A. But I just want to tell everybody up front, if you don't know, you can find this podcast on all popular platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Music, and tons more. And if we're not on a platform of your choice, if you found a little hole in our outlet of putting out this podcast, just let us know and we'll try to plug it in. Try to fix that up for you.
Are you part of the Bastards community? No? Well, join the fucking conversation and engage with us by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/bastardsofgaming. Each week we share your thoughts and feedback on our show. Subscribe to us on YouTube and rewatch clips from past episodes. Simply search for Bastards of Gaming. Lastly, we would love if you could leave us some honest reviews on our Facebook ratings page or in the podcast platform you use to listen to us, such as iTunes. Those reviews will go a long way in helping us build this podcast and community.
All right, topic of the week time. We're going to talk about video game music appreciation, all the soundtracks, the music, and the original works that we like from the games we've been playing throughout our life. We've got a lot of interesting things to talk about. This is why we brought Brian on today, because he had a lot he wanted to say about video game soundtracks. So, Brian, why don't you go ahead and kick this off with the Doom reboot soundtrack?
I guess my first point is just that, part of the reason that I wanted to be on this particular episode is that music and video games are sort of the things that I'm kind of drawn to the most when I'm not raising goats for the Bastards of Gaming. I write for Regen Magazine, and music is my jam. I'm really into it. But as far as Doom goes, I think the thing that is so amazing about Doom is that it was able to kind of come out of nowhere and reinvent what a soundtrack could be. I think Mick Gordon went above and beyond, and there's plenty of videos out there of him talking about how he made the soundtrack that are worth watching. And the soundtrack, I mean, it was just a phenomenon. From the moment that you start the game, it just sort of takes over and steers everything that you're seeing, all the action, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I love how it starts with the last little dun when he cocks the shotgun. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that was when I knew that we're in for a epic ride with the music and this game once that happened.
And we're done for the night.
That went nowhere fast.
Okay, so what I thought was really cool about the process of making this was how Mick Gordon basically said that he was going to completely change the process of how he was making music to create something completely different for the game, because that's what was asked of him. And it's such a generic thing to ask of a musician, like write something no one's ever heard before. It has to be brand new and fresh, and it has to fit perfectly in with all the artwork and the feel of the game. And the video that we all actually watched, I forget what it's actually called on YouTube, but there's a video of Mick Gordon giving a presentation of how he came to the sound that is used throughout Doom. And
yeah, it's a GDC talk, so if you can just Google that or look it up on YouTube. It's some GDC talk from last year, was it? Was it 2017 or 2018?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But you could probably type in like Mick Gordon GDC Doom, and it probably comes up. So basically what he did was he took like a whole bunch of like sub sounds, like subwoofer sounds, and just put them through all these side chains and distortion and all this crazy stuff. And since everything was being mixed down at the end after going through all these different processes, it was creating a sound that would morph on its own. And he would turn knobs and stuff and like change things to kind of give it another like an otherworldly sound, if you will. But the sound itself was just like morphing on its own because of just how like sound physics work. It's just crazy to see it, and it's just kind of an amazing thing that all these things could happen like that.
It's not meant to be buzzing. That's that buzzing over there. The gap. Here it is run through that array. All I'm doing is changing the amplitude and then tweaking some of the knobs as I go.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting in the beginning of that was when they basically came to him and said, like, no guitars. And I'm sitting here, you know, as an old school guitar player, and I'm like, what? Why would you ever say that? So I was like, and I had to think for a second when they said, I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure there was guitars in the game, because I know that's why I liked it. That's going to be a theme you're going to see throughout this topic is my love of sort of guitars and guitar stuff and you know, video game soundtracks. And so like when they were coming at him and saying, you know, you're going to make this like sort of heavy metal demon, you know, video game, and you're not going to have like metal guitars in it, I was kind of like, huh? And so I like that, I like how he actually approached that, where he did bring it in later, and they actually let him put guitars in, but that was after he had done all the stuff that you were talking about as far as making this unique sound. And it was just an interesting layer that sort of pulled it all together for me. Just was having those, you know, metal guitars over everything.
The way that he blended the guitar sounds with the chainsaw noise just blows me away, especially in that particular video where he's discussing how he did it. To hear the two components on their own and then combined, I don't know, it gives you a new appreciation for sort of all the nuances that go into the things that are happening in the background. It's something that it's not something you're going to notice immediately in every single game, but I mean, I think a good soundtrack for a game is one that grabs your attention and sort of like it enhances your experience, but it also is something that's strong enough to stand on its own or to merit getting your attention on its own.
Yeah, and I think I think this Doom soundtrack is kind of one of all of our three favorite soundtracks in this whole list. It's kind of something that we've all sort of identified with. We brought it up briefly a couple weeks ago in one of our podcasts. We kind of went and had a little aside talking about the Doom soundtrack briefly for a second. But yeah, this kind of puts everything that I love about music just in general into the soundtrack of this game. Like I said, I'm a guitar player, I like metal music and stuff like that. So any video game with that kind of sound, I'm definitely on board with it. And so I think SynthR and Brian here are coming at it more from the synthy side of it, whereas I'm coming at it from more of the guitar side of it. But it meshes very well together, and it sounds really great. So it kind of shows that if you incorporate all these different elements that people like into something, like sometimes it can bring people together. That's what music does, is it brings people together. And so this was like the first sort of video game soundtrack that we were all wanted to talk about on here because we all love it so much.
So plus, I think that for the industrial sort of side of it, I like the fact that in the video where he's talking about how he made it, he references back to the soundtrack for Doom 3, which was a good soundtrack in its own right. Maybe not quite as groundbreaking or as Mick Gordon's soundtrack, but he mentions Chris Brenna, who was the drummer for Nine Inch Nails for many, many years. And he's, since gone off and done his own thing as Tweaker, and a very accomplished, very talented musician in his own right. But that was also kind of, approaching like the mid to late 90s and early 2000s when stuff like that's coming out. And you have, it wasn't the first time that, just to sort of transition a little bit here, it wasn't the first time that like id Software had had experimental like industrial soundtracks. Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails had previously done the soundtrack for the first Quake game, and in that game, of course you get the nail gun and like the boxes of ammo have the little Nine Inch Nails logo on them, but the soundtrack was absolutely amazing. So I don't know, I think there's a high bar for Doom and Quake soundtracks from here on out.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say that type of music really fits that atmosphere, though. It really fits with like the visceral brutalness that you're like inflicting upon demons or inflicting upon like possessed people and stuff like that. So it just fits. Like it goes hand in hand, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And a sort of futuristic, sort of sci-fi industrial corporation on Mars, harvesting hell's energy and all this stuff kind of feeds into the idea of this like really industrial music sound. And then with the demons and all the evil stuff, that's where the sort of heavy metal guitar sound comes in. And I understand their initial inclination to not do the most generic thing possible, which is just have heavy metal music playing as the soundtrack. And so while I would have not banned guitars outright, because ultimately that led to creating the ultimate sound for this soundtrack, in my opinion, pulling it all together. I can see where they were just like, let's not do the thing that everyone thinks we're going to do with the soundtrack, which is just have like heavy metal music playing in the background,
Since you're talking about the Hell's Energy part, when Mick Gordon was creating the sound, it's just interesting that sort of like untamed, side-chained, crazy process subwoofer sound itself is almost like Hell's Energy, where it's just this crazy, uncontrollable energy that it just morphs and like sparks off and lightning bolts come off of it. And it's just I see that connection with like the visual of Hell's Energy and that sound that he created for the game. And it's all through the entire game, because that's the soundtrack, just like when you go to Hell and partly on Mars, where the Hell's Energy is like the core of the planet, and it's seeping into reality. I don't know. I just thought it was like a cool way of bridging the two things together.
You made a brilliant point. It's a little hard to follow that up, but I mean that is essentially what it does, and I think that's kind of what, at least for me, leaves me a little bit stumped about what to say about it, because I'm just kind of blown away. Like you when you play the game, you have an appreciation for it. And you're like, this is really great, but you learn about what went into it, and the different experiments that he tried, the things that he hid inside of some of the waveforms and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just are left in awe of it. I mean, I had an appreciation for it before I knew what went into it, and then after sort of finding out his method and his process for making it, and how it tied so closely to the theme of the game, I just think that it's an absolute masterpiece. It just
I like the 666 and pentagram stuff hidden in the wave files and stuff. I thought it was like a cool little touch there.
Yeah, so what he did was, for the viewers, you could take a picture and you can use like a spectrograph, and what it'll do is it'll transform an image into like a sound wave, and it could be like anything. It usually doesn't really sound like anything, but he would take like an image of a 6, and then he would put 666 into like the 4/4 beat of the song, and it'd kind of be hidden in there. You wouldn't really notice it, but he hid those things in it. And another one he did was he played like a clip of somebody saying Jesus loves you in reverse, and that harkens back to like old school like Satanism, where people are playing records backwards and stuff, and there's hidden meanings and whatever. So he really went back into the whole like Satan worshipping type stuff from old and added in all these references and stuff, and it's quite funny to people that enjoy that sort of thing. I'm sure there's people that are appalled by it and they're like, oh my god, I'm playing a game that's giving me subliminal messages, which it's not, but it's like a nice nod to that sort of culture.
Yeah, it's just crazy that there's so many layers to this. Like, I think most people just listen to a video game soundtrack, and this one specifically, and you can't even begin to understand all the different levels of things going on and the ways in which he basically came to the sound that is the soundtrack, and all the different things that went into it. It's crazy when you see what goes on behind the scenes, because you wouldn't think that much work actually went into it. You would, like me, or just me personally, I just assumed that, because I'm not really up on how industrial metal bands and stuff like that create their sound necessarily. I'm more of a purist when it comes to music. I'm about playing instruments, so I didn't really know that much about the sort of synthy technical side of things. So it was very interesting for me to learn about things that I never even knew about. If you would have told me all these different things went into making this sound and stuff like that, I would have never believed it, or I wouldn't have thought it went as deep as it does. But it's pretty crazy.
I'm such a musical purist. I listen to unpolished French horns, so I don't.
Yeah.
I never bother learning about anything else.
I just want clean guitar sounds, just one mic in the room, and it just records everything, with one take kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, so the other game I think bears or needs to be mentioned as far as innovative ways music is used. Choice of Metal Black was, I'm sure you guys would agree, it was pretty easy to say that it was a big hit on PlayStation. And it had this element to it where the soundtrack, when you were in combat, actively engaged in, chasing someone down, shooting your guns or whatever, the music would be very, very intense, very loud, very bombastic. And then the moment that you were sort of away from everybody, maybe you went to go find some health or pick up weapons or whatever, the moment that you were sort of away from everybody, it would calm down into a similar track. If you listen to both the action track and then the track that's just sort of the background sound for the stage, they almost seem sort of layered, like one is building on top of the other. And every level had the two different soundtracks. It was really brilliant, and it really put you into so that every time you were engaging, you had this excitement because the music would swell and change, and I just remember being really engaged with the game because of that.
Yeah, it was super important to the overall sound and gameplay experience. I mean, it really added to the drama, and it really, because the game was so dark and gritty, it just really had this epic, feel to it. Whenever you would move away from action, come back in, and power missiles are getting shot off, and homing missiles are zooming by, and the music swells and gets crazier, and it just gave it this feel that it really stood out to me at the time. But I just want to say that they were doing this even back in Twisted Metal 1 also, which me and Brian had forgot about until we were going back and looking at some of this stuff, getting ready for the podcast, and we realized that they were even doing that as far back as Twisted Metal 1. I don't know if that's the first game to necessarily use this specific technique of sort of building the music around the player actions. I'm sure there might be some other examples out there. I know this is a technique that's being more commonly used now in video games. I don't have any specific examples to cite offhand, but I know I've heard other people talking about kind of using similar techniques with games where once things start popping off and there's combat happening, that they they have the ability to switch in and out the music and stuff like that. So it's a cool technique that really stood out to me first in Twisted Metal Black.
Thanks for snubbing me there, because I pointed that out about Twisted Metal 1. You son of a bitch.
Yeah, you're the one that pointed out. Yeah, I'm sorry, okay?
Fuck's sake.
Credit where credit's due.
Okay.
So kind of in the same vein there, and I know I've been talking about Guacamelee for the last few episodes because it's in my mind, but in Guacamelee, they have dimension swapping that you can do on command. So basically what that lets you do is in one dimension there'll be platforms there, but if you switch to another dimension, the platforms disappear or new ones appear, so that you can kind of jump from platform to platform, but as you're in the air you have to swap to another dimension to get to the next platform. So it's like this crazy thing happening, and between the dimensions there's different types of music. So there's like a regular kind of like mariachi type song playing, and then you switch to the World of the Dead dimension, and then it changes to this like really echoey, lots of reverb version of the same song, and it's a bit remixed, so it just kind of sounds so like airy and like ambient. And then when you switch back, it's just like a regular type sound for the song. And the whole game has like both of these types of tracks throughout it for each level or each area that you go through. And it's similar like Twisted Metal, where it just has those two layers playing at the same time. So when you switch to the other dimension, it doesn't miss a beat. It's the same song. It's still on beat. It just switches to that version of it, and it's pretty neat. It just blends and flows perfectly as you're playing the game, because the game's kind of chaotic. So it's just really cool and innovative.
Yeah, I think it's I haven't played the second one, but I played the first one, and it's not a soundtrack that stood out to me per se, but I definitely thought it was pretty cool when I was playing through it, because it's just kind of super appropriate. It's kind of the soundtrack, or the different vibes that you think should be in a game based around a luchador, where it's kind of got that mariachi feel, a lot of guitars and horns and stuff like that.
I do like horns.
I bet you do. You like blowing them.
Sure do.
He likes blowing all the horns. All of them.
Not all of them. You like blowing the dirty fucking French horns, though, like we already said.
Yeah, untarnished, unpolished.
Unpolished.
I I did play a saxophone at one point, so I have blown into some instruments, I'll admit.
Were you in the film Lost Boys in the beginning? Were you the sax man, the shirtless sax man?
Yeah, that was me. That was totally me.
I believe it. Man, you look great.
It was back when playing saxophone was cool, like when Bill Clinton was on Saturday Night Live, and that kind of thing. When it was actually cool. Now it's not really cool.
Speaking of more musical instruments, let's talk about orchestrated soundtracks. And one of my favorite soundtracks is pretty much everything from Shadow of the Colossus. Love that game.
Yeah.
I know Xizor loves that game. It's such an epic game, and the soundtrack is epic right alongside it. Just carries the whole game through.
Yeah, I was listening to it since you mentioned it. It wasn't an initial thing that jumped out to me to revisit for this topic, but I did listen to it, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. It's just it didn't. It's definitely a good part of that game. There's a lot of cool themes and stuff going on there. So yeah, when I went back and listened, because I played the remake of it last year when it came out, like last February, I think it was. I bought it and played through it again, and yeah, like I said, it wasn't the first sort of orchestrated soundtrack that came to mind, but when I went back and listened to it, because you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, this is pretty good.
It just fits the whole like boss battle-esque game, like right to the end, like all 16 Colossus or Colossi. It's just really cool. And there's another game that I mentioned before in a couple podcasts ago with Total Annihilation, where that game has an epic orchestrated soundtrack, and it does the same thing as Twisted Metal and Guacamelee do, where it has the like nothing's really happening, ambient, calm music, melancholy, you're building units and stuff, because it's an RTS game, and then the second somebody fires off a shot or you get attacked, it just turns into this like epic battle music with just all the instruments blaring and everything's happening, and then all the explosions are happening alongside. It's just really epic, and like the theater of war with the music.
Yeah, I really like that track that you shared. That was one of my favorite ones, because we've been all sharing video game music all throughout the week in preparation for this podcast. So we've been listening to each other's stuff, and this is one of the tracks that you picked that I actually liked. It has this like epic Star Wars feel to it. Like I was listening to it and I was just envisioning like X-wings forming up in attack formation and doing strafing runs on some fucking Imperial base or something while I'm listening to it.
Yeah, the game is basically it's like a really futuristic game where everything is machines. So there's two different sides, and one side is people manning machines to fight the war, and then the other side is a consciousness inside the robots. So there's two like warring factions over that philosophy, and that's what it is. It's in space. It's on different planets, and it's just total annihilation. Like they're just destroying the universe, basically fighting over this stuff.
All right, and so the next pick is one that I brought to the table here, which is from God of War last year. The God of War almost reboot in a way that came out on PlayStation 4. Now the soundtrack was done by Bear McCreary, who's I guess is most famously known for doing the Battlestar Galactica TV show score back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, were you guys fans of that? Because that's where I was came on board the McCreary train.
Yes, absolutely. Just the opening music, just the use of like the kabuki drums and mixed with sort of sweeping orchestral parts. I loved it. It was so engaging. I mean, from the very moment that the show opened, you were just hooked. So I have no doubt that I haven't played the most recent God of War, but I have no doubt that he did a fantastic job based on the track that you shared.
This is a little bit slightly different than the vibe of Battlestar Galactica. Obviously, this is, if you haven't played the newest God of War, it's a really great game. Like it's completely different from the old God of Wars in all the best ways. But yeah, the track that I picked in particular is kind of shows like what I like about a orchestral video game soundtrack. I like the vibe of the song because it's like some Viking ships are about to roll up on the shore and fuck your village up. Like that's the kind of shit I think they would be listening to if Vikings had this kind of music back then. That's what it just invokes in me when I hear it. I just like that kind of epic sort of, like almost darker tone to the sort of orchestral track sometimes. And so yeah, the music throughout the whole entire game is really great. It's the whole soundtrack isn't exactly like this particular track that I picked, which is Peaks Pass. That's just more of like a standout to me, like as something that I really like, the style that I like when it comes to orchestrated video game soundtracks. And then moving on from this into one of my favorite games of all time, which is The Witcher 3. A very similar thing, another more orchestral soundtrack with that. Very iconic to me because of the almost folk sort of spirit that's, it moves throughout the entire soundtrack. The female vocals in a lot of the standout songs, the sort of the iconic themes of The Witcher 3, all center around this very epic, folky sound. And I like it because, watching some of the behind the scenes of the making of the soundtrack, there's a lot of, just random musicians and bands from over there in, what's the name of the country that's in Poland, gosh. A lot of local talent that they brought in, and some of them, they didn't really set out to create a specific sound or anything like that. A lot of the people that originally came in were people that couldn't even read music. They just sort of improvised and made things up. And I sort of identified with that as someone that used to play in a lot of bands and stuff. That's a lot of how we would write our music. Is someone might come in with an idea or like a riff or something like that, and then we would just jam on it and just see what happened. And that was like always the fun to me of creating music. And so it was cool to see like a lot of the original ideas of the soundtrack of Witcher 3 sort of came about by just people sitting around and kind of doodling on their instruments and jamming and then like playing off of each other and stuff like that. So it wasn't even necessarily written in the traditional sense. Now that later on they sort of add in the more symphony orchestral parts to it, but some of the core pieces of the album were just these little disparate sort of musical ideas, and then they just kind of tweaked them and built around that. And by the end of it, it sounds like really professional and layered. But there's a lot of cool because I'm a guitar player myself, and I play a little bit of drums too. I don't really play anymore, but so I like stringed instruments. I like that kind of sound in my music. There's a lot of like folky string, weird. I can't even remember the names of all the sort of weird instruments they use in this, but it's super cool, and it achieves this really unique sound, even in the space of like orchestrated soundtracks where, if you've played the game, there's plenty of iconic themes and tracks from The Witcher 3 that just really stand out to me and really like just set the tone and the mood for that game that just completely fits with everything that game does. And I think it just kind of pulls it all together.
I would agree. Like Witcher 3 has a very unique sound to its soundtrack, and when I hear any of those instruments, it just makes me remember like Geralt. Like I just think of him, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of synonymous with him, because obviously I don't listen to folk music or any of that stuff, but it's just I think of The Witcher when I hear that type of music and those instruments.
Yeah, like whenever I think of The Witcher, I think first off, one of the greatest games of all time. But then I think about Geralt and I think about the world, and I just think about the soundtrack. Like, if you just say Witcher 3 to me, I think about Geralt and the soundtrack immediately, and those female vocals throughout, those little like kind of almost like chanting type stuff, and I just and then I start getting like, oh, I just want to go run and play this game right now, because that's how strongly the music ties it all together for me.
They should have had you in the recording studio. You have a voice of an angel. Didn't you record the Halo theme? Wasn't that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was all me. I mean, you know, I didn't want to like put it out there, you know, because I didn't want to like, you know, I didn't want to brag, but that was pretty much me. Did all that. So the next pick for me is the Journey soundtrack. Now, I don't know, have either of you guys played Journey?
I did.
I have listened to the band.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
Not exactly. It's a little bit different. But no, Journey was this indie game that came out last generation on the PS3. And if you haven't played it, it's a tremendous game. It's a short little game that you can beat in like 2 hours, but it's one of the most moving experiences I've ever had with a video game. There's no speech in it. It's just you interacting with the world, and it's hard to explain why it's so emotionally evocative, but part of it is the soundtrack. And what's interesting about the soundtrack, it was written by Austin Wintory, and he's done other games like the Banner Saga stuff, the Order 1886, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and Abzu and stuff like that. But what was cool about this soundtrack is that after it was released, it actually reached the top 10 of the iTunes soundtrack charts in more than 20 countries. It also reached position 116 on the Billboard sales charts. And then in December of 2012, Journey received a Grammy nomination for Best Score for like soundtrack and visual media. Becoming the first video game score to receive a Grammy nomination. So it's even been accepted in the greater music sort of appreciation circles as a real important body of work. I love the soundtrack. I used to listen. It's one of the few soundtracks that I listen to just like outside of a game. I'm the type of person where I enjoy the soundtracks while I'm playing a game. They sort of add to the experience of a game, but it's very rare that I want to listen to video game soundtracks outside of the game. And this is one that I'll put on every now and then to sort of, I don't know, it kind of just like chills me out. Like I used to have this job where I would have to flip flop my schedule every week, like midweek, and get up like super early, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I would try to do things to help myself like fall asleep. And this is a very soothing soundtrack to listen to. And I would read a book while I was listening to it. And so it's just a very touching, very awesome soundtrack.
You know what? For all the accolades that you just mentioned, I don't remember any of the music. Like, to be honest, I don't remember any of it.
So just to jump in, Don't Stop Believing was one of the more famous songs on the Journey soundtrack.
I think I heard it on the radio today.
Yes, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's why I got all this recognition. I mean, it's iconic music. I mean, Don't Stop Believing is like, if you don't know what that is and you listening to that on a regular basis, then like you're not a normal human being.
Yeah, I mean that, and When You Love a Woman. Oh man, those are classics.
Exactly, but no, I mean, it's a very standard video game orchestral soundtrack. Like it's not distinct in any specific way. It's just very of that type of soundtrack, the type that would be normally set to a movie or something like that. And so that's why I got more recognition I think because it was like your more traditional orchestral soundtrack, and I think the fact that sort of Journey was this weird little indie hit that it was about the length of a movie. You know what I mean? So I think it just sort of hit all these specific tent poles and just got a lot more attention. That's when sort of I think video game music and stuff like that and these little indie titles were starting to really take off in more of the public space, where people were starting to recognize that, hey, video game music is like a legit thing. And so this was right around that time when that happened. Like I said, it's a very traditional score, so I think that's why it got more picked up and more notoriety than your typical video game soundtrack would. But I don't even really understand all the reasons why it happened. But I just thought it was a neat aside to throw in about how it got picked up and was nominated for a Grammy and stuff like that, because it's pretty significant for a video game.
I think overall, I think indie titles are prone to having good soundtracks, good music. I don't know if the reason for that being that they don't have as much money to spend on soundtrack as a AAA title, where they can pay for an orchestra, which is something that is not cheap. And so they're willing to take a chance on smaller artists or not. But anyway, aside from that point, the soundtrack for Dead Cells. Dead Cells is an indie platformer, sort of like Castlevania. You're unlocking different weapons, and every single run you're trying to get a little bit further, and the things you unlock are permanent. And so even though you're dying because the game is challenging, you're always compelled to go on. The cool thing that you manage to unlock, or the thing that you earned, is going to be there for you on your next run. And maybe on your next run, you're going to use different strategies. Maybe you're going to play like more of a ranged guy or a tactician or something. So whatever kind of play style you want to bring to it is how you can play it and enjoy it. But overall, the soundtrack is just absolutely amazing. You were talking about great percussion instruments, kabuki drums, sort of thundering, just reverberating great bassy sounds with Spanish guitar kind of over the top of it, and sweeping sort of chorus singing. It's really something to behold, and it really sets the tone for the whole game, because all of the levels and everything is taking place in a prison, and you're trying to sort of find out what happened, and you're being constantly reincarnated, and it just fits everything associated with the game, and it's absolutely fantastic.
I haven't played the game yet, but I checked out what you linked us, and it does sound like a good soundtrack. So I'm looking forward to playing the game and hearing what it's like.
You will enjoy it. It's right up your alley.
Don't tell me what I'm going to like.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Another game worth mentioning while we're on the topic of great orchestrated soundtracks. The game itself didn't quite find an audience, kind of had some missteps. Dawn of War 3 was a highly anticipated sequel in the Dawn of War series, made by Relic Games, and the game itself was a disappointment. I mean, fans of the series, myself included, it just sort of tried to borrow too much from MOBAs, and I don't think that's the experience that people are looking for when they put on a Dawn of War game. But the soundtrack is absolutely worth looking up. It was conducted and composed rather by Paul Leonard Morgan. He had previously done the soundtrack for Dread, the film with Carl Urban, which had a fantastic soundtrack in its own right.
Yeah.
But the soundtrack for the game is just as good as anything he's done before or since.
Okay, so the next topic here we're going to talk about in this video game soundtrack topic is SynthR actually wrote this in our little show doc. He put technical musician stuff musicianship stuff, which is funny because I'm known for being like this like very technical musician. I like very technical music, and so it kind of doesn't really apply, in my opinion, to video game soundtracks. There's not really anything in video game soundtracks that really appeal to my taste in music, which is, I think, a big reason why I've never been super enthusiastic about video game soundtracks per se. This topic was mostly brought up for Brian and SynthR to express their love for video game soundtracks and the types of music that goes into it, because I think they both identify more with your traditional synthy, industrial sort of sounds and stuff like that, which is what video game soundtracks have already been. I'm my musical taste outside of video games, just the kind of stuff I listen to every day, is like prog rock and prog metal. I like very experimental, just crazy, odd time signatures, and just music that can just go in 1,000 different directions. I like being surprised. I get bored with songs that are always in 4/4 time signatures because it's just so standard, and that's just what all music is written in. And I like when things just go off in a completely different direction. And I'm a huge fan of the sounds that you get from bands that have a drummer, a guitar player or two, a bass player, and a keyboard player. That's my ideal sound, is those kind of instruments and stuff like that. And so some of the picks I got, the first thing I put up here, even though we're going to talk about Final Fantasy later on, I actually added this at the 11th hour last night. You were sharing stuff with the Final Fantasy soundtrack with me, Final Fantasy 9. And I remember this was one of the first soundtracks that I actually bought outside of like Halo. And I remember listening to that. I bought it on CD and back in the day, and I really liked the Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack. But I was trying to find the specific tracks that I liked because I haven't heard it in so long. I was going through and I found this like remix version of the what is the Final Battle song from the Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack, and it has more of the rock elements that I like. I was wanting to listen to it again, and I was looking it up on YouTube, and I found that like the actual original version of the song, that's still the same in a lot of ways, but I like the other version with the guitars in it, because like I said, that's kind of my passion. And what's interesting about video game soundtracks in general, just a quick aside, is that like I said, the SynthR is always. Me and him have gone back and forth over the years about our musical taste and stuff like that, because he approaches things from a completely different angle than I do, and that's all fine and valid. But I don't just approach everything from a technical standpoint. What's cool about video game music in general is that a lot of the things that I like about prog rock and prog metal are as far as a compositional standpoint, come from the same place where. Like a lot of, especially early Japanese, video game soundtracks, even going back to like 8-bit and like chiptunes and stuff like that, and the early 90s, like MIDI stuff is all like classically sort of trained like musicians that were writing this stuff. What's cool about this topic is that it shows how like music is this universal language, and it's all throughout everything. And so. The first thing is the Halo 2 soundtrack, which was incredible back in the day, because it kind of put my two favorite things together. Like before the game came out, they had Steve Vai. They brought him on to play guitar for the main theme and contribute to a couple little tracks here and there. But he, in my opinion, he's one of the greatest guitar players of all time. He's certainly like if you were to ask me who's the greatest, I think he's the greatest, even though that's subjective. So at the time, I was completely in love with Halo. Like this is after Halo 1 came out and completely took sort of video games by storm, changed the landscape. Everyone was playing Halo, and so when Halo 2 was about to come out, and I saw they were bringing in my favorite guitar player, I'm like, oh, this is fucking epic as shit. And so my favorite theme is the main Halo theme. with him just kind of mixed in on it. It's super great. And then there's another track off the sort of Halo 2 anniversary. And just a quick aside too, back in the day, I mean, everyone, like, people forget that Halo 2 was just like a phenomenon when it came out, and even musicians just wanted to get involved with it. So you had people like Breaking Benjamin, and there was even John Mayer who secretly put in some little guitar parts here on the soundtrack that people didn't know about until way later. Because everyone was so into this thing, even musicians and artists and all this other stuff. So, and then you have Halo 2 Anniversary, which has this one track. There's a couple tracks with this guy on it. Let's see, I'm gonna look up. I'm trying to remember his name real quick. It's Misha Mansoon, I think, something like. He's the guitar player from Peripheral. So they bring him on for a couple tracks. The one I like the most is Follow in Flight. It's pretty standard video gaming music, but like I said, this is more like layering in the types of sounds and things that I like, which are like really technical and hardcore, like riffy guitars and stuff like that. Like I love a good guitar riff, like a good heavy guitar riff. And so Halo 2 is one of the greatest examples of, even though some of the things aren't in the main game, some of them are just kind of things that are kind of separately on the soundtrack. It's a really cool way to incorporate the sort of sounds and things that I like into a video game soundtrack. And on the topic of Halo, I mean, I could go on forever about the Halo soundtracks and everything that Marty McDaniel basically contributed to he was the first person that sort of made me recognize a video game soundtrack. Like the Halo 1 theme to this day, if I hear it somewhere, I just immediately kind of lock up for a second. I just get chills, like that original Halo theme, because it's not even so much about the music itself. It's about like all the nostalgia and feelings that it invokes in me. Like it takes me back to a time when, I was younger and all my friends, we were having LAN parties and playing Halo. So when I hear that Halo theme, man, it just hits me to my core. And it's super important. But the Halo soundtracks have always been super great. I mean, this could have easily been in the sort of orchestrated soundtrack section, because that's basically, it's more of your traditional classically trained composer sort of way of approaching the video game soundtrack. But one of my favorites outside of like Halo 2, and basically all the Halo soundtracks are great, but Halo ODST is really cool. It has this... a couple tracks I got listed here is Neon Night and Traffic Jam. I just kind of picked a couple at random. I couldn't really decide. A lot of these tracks change and morph, but the Halo ODST soundtrack is really cool. It has these sort of jazzy elements to it in certain sections. Lots of little like a saxophone in there and stuff like that. The Halo soundtracks are some of my favorite, the most iconic video game music of all time, in my personal opinion. And playing off this, we're getting into Paul M. Diaz from Facebook. He wrote in and he said, as far as video game music, Destiny 1, Bow to No One, is the music played when you gain the newer subclass for your characters. Magnum's a huge Destiny fan. I played a lot of Destiny. The Destiny soundtrack, Destiny is Bungie, which also made all the Halo games. And when they first came on to doing Destiny, you had Marty McDonald, and he basically composed the music for this. And unfortunately, he was let go shortly before the game actually came out. I guess no one really knows the extent to why that happened. I guess Activision was like, why are we paying some in-house composer to just stick around all the time? But he's the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. And his work on Halo moving into Destiny is just incredible. And the Destiny soundtrack, 1 and 2, are just incredible. Even though he's not involved, he worked with he brought on his old friend that he had been working with for even during the Destiny days, has sort of continued on making the Destiny 2 soundtracks, or even the expansions to Destiny 1. But my favorite was this track that came out with the original Destiny called Sepix Prime, I think, when they came out with the Rise of Iron expansion to the first game. They did a remix of it where they brought in Misha Mansour, again from Periphery, that did that one couple tracks for Halo 2 Anniversary. And so it adds this guitar layer to the song that really brings it to light. And it plays during this boss fight with Sepix Prime. And it's just, oh man, every time like I play that boss fight and that music kicks in, I'm just like, fuck yes, man. Like, this is my shit. So that's another example. The Destiny soundtrack, absolutely phenomenal. And then, Brian, you play Destiny. What do you think about the soundtrack of that?
In particular, Destiny 2. I didn't play the first Destiny, unfortunately. But Destiny 2, I recently started playing back in October sometime. And man, the soundtrack it blows you away. I mean, you're sort of wandering around these kind of strange alien worlds, and you have this, on some planets it might, be this sort of creeping ambient sort of vocal track that swells up into this other. It's something that you have to experience. I would say that, like, as far as video game sort of design goes, I think Destiny 2 really got a lot right. Captures that feeling of being somewhere new and strange, and experiencing things that you haven't before. It really captures that sort of like a modern day version of ray punk, like the sort of atomic age, lasers and explosions and strange aliens, 60s pulp sci-fi covers. The game captures that, and the music just really accompanies that and really helps send it home. And then, for different areas in the game, you have like the sweeping orchestral kind of Halo-esque sort of approach to music. But down on the planets, I mean, it's another experience altogether, just to sort of be in that atmosphere and to be able to appreciate the music with the proper setting, I guess.
Yeah, and I just want to say a quick aside, a quick autocorrect in the middle of the podcast here, because I'm a fucking moron sometimes. I was saying Marty McDaniel and all this other shit. It's Marty O'Donnell. I don't know why he's like my favorite video game composer of all time. I couldn't even get his fucking name right because I'm a moron. But the other person I was going to mention in relation to that was Michael Salvatore, and he was sort of the he was also involved in the Halo. He was brought on after Halo 1. To work with all of Bungie's video game soundtracks as well, and he's the one that's continued on his sort of legacy, which is why you don't really see too much of a change between Marty leaving in Destiny 1 and then the way the soundtrack is now, because they both owned a company together, and they both worked side by side composing a lot of the music, and Marty always gets a lot of the credit for it, but he's kind of the secret ingredient here. And so he's the one that's been able to continue on the sort of legacy because he was helping. Okay, so Destiny and Halo are basically the most iconic video game soundtracks of all time to me. Destiny probably less so now that, I was kind of torn up that they basically let Marty O'Donnell go, and he hasn't been involved in it. But like I said, Michael Salvatore's been carrying on the legacy, and the sounds and stuff like that are still great. So moving on from here, one of my other favorite soundtracks that I've heard in recent years, which is Killing Floor 2, which I think we've all played the Killing Floor games, right?
Yeah, I have number 2 and the first one.
Yeah, I remember playing. I remember playing with you in the first one, right, Brian? Didn't we all play the first one together?
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah. So this gets back, and this is more into the sort of metal side of things, like heavy guitars, and this is more like just straight up metal music in this. So that's what I liked about it. You know, this is a game about killing a bunch of monsters and zombies and creatures. I don't even remember the lore of it all now, or if it even has any. But this is like definitely another video game soundtrack that stood out to me because it's your typical heavy metal shit that I like. And the two songs that I picked for this particular game are Killer Be Killed and Clone Mutation. And the reason why I like this is like, it's kind of weird. I pigeonhole myself with music and liking certain things, but I love heavy metal music, but I don't really like the sort of screamy, yelling vocals a lot of times. So I like a lot of more instrumental metal music a lot of times because it just gives me all the elements I want without the crazy singer that's just saying whatever the fuck and blah 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 blah, blah. And like I mean sometimes I like that, sometimes I like it, sometimes it really, if someone does it right, it's really good. So these two tracks in particular, they're just instrumental, they don't have a singer, and so I like that quite a bit. What were your guys' thoughts on the Killing Floor soundtrack, if you have any?
Well, just to interject, last week, or on the last episode, or one of the previous podcast episodes, you were talking briefly about, like, I might have been the last one, you guys were talking about soundtracks, and you were talking about, like, oh, what's the shoot 'em up game with the metal soundtrack? And I was like, I wanted to shout at my Spotify, Killing Floor, you idiot! God, why can't you remember it? Because, I mean, that was the first thing that came to my mind, was, like, metal soundtrack, shooting lots of guns at zombies, and I think that it just fits. I think if with a game as sort of simplistic as Killing Floor is, such a simple premise of survive, way onslaught of zombies coming in and try and survive and shoot them and everything. It's not a new idea. It's been done plenty of other times, but the game really captures something with its kind of over the top violence and like the sort of unapologetic soundtrack. It doesn't care that it's loud and abrasive and in your face and like this sort of just ridiculous, like any person I've ever gotten to come play the game, they're just like, that's something that they always comment on, is that they're all like, wow, we were just killing zombies and just shooting monsters and stuff, and then metal just starts, and it's great.
Well, it's so unique to that game because, like I said when I was talking earlier, the sort of typical like metal rock band sort of structure and sound is not really conducive to most video game soundtracks. So whenever you hear that in Doom, for example, it's kind of the same thing. When you have those sounds, it really stands out to you because you're like, oh no, it's not this sort of stuff that's just kind of layered in the background to sort of just enhance and give a piece of work or a piece of art just some more feeling, just to kind of fill it out, which is what a lot of video game soundtracks I always thought kind of did. I just didn't take video game soundtracks that seriously back in the day until I just started really paying more attention and really thinking about it, because I always just looked at soundtracks, even in movies and TV shows, as just something that was there to just add a little bit of atmosphere and to heighten certain moments and stuff like that. So I never really just looked at it separately as a body of work. And so, like I said, being that that's the sort of sound that I like, a rock band, a metal band sound, it's anytime I hear that in a video game soundtrack, it immediately jumps out to me because I'm like, oh, this is something different than what I'm used to hearing.
I'll just say that horror and metal music just go together. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like killing demons and just blowing people apart, blowing some dude's head off and all this stuff. It's totally indicative. It totally relates to the metal vibe, the typical, sadly, bullshit metal vibe of like death and destruction and blah, blah, blah.
Satan.
Yeah, Satan, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I mean, I get it, guys, but like, can we not all do that? Like, maybe we just have some good vocals here and there. That's what I like. I want to know about something other than like, I don't even know what you're saying. I mean,
that's probably the problem.
Exactly. And then, I don't need to know exactly what you're talking about. It's not the biggest point of contention. It's just like, it's so like typical to just do that, and I just kind of hate that with metal music.
Okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity to segue into the next section. We're all pretty much done hearing about how, only worthy music may grace your ears. But
you're a pretentious fuck.
My shit is the best. I don't give a fuck what you say about it.
So this is a great opportunity to transition because you were just talking about metal, and the next topic on the agenda for this show is atmospheric music, and in particular, I wanted to talk about the soundtrack for Apocalypsis, which features some voiceover for some of the story elements by Nurgle from Behemoth, and it features a couple of instrumental Behemoth songs on the soundtrack. Behemoth did not compose the entire soundtrack. That was another artist. I believe it was a Polish composer whose name I forget, and I'm doing them a disservice by not mentioning it here, because the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. The game itself it goes on sale pretty often on Steam. You can pick it up for a couple of bucks. It's definitely worth that. It's not long. It's maybe an hour or two to beat it. Some of the puzzles can be a little frustrating, but essentially it's just a side-scrolling point-and-click adventure game, sort of telling the story of the art style is all, the sort of medieval woodcut, and there's a lot of very, very dark things in it. It has a very oppressive atmosphere, and overlaid over the top of all of this sort of Dante's Inferno-esque grimdark, is this really haunting, beautiful soundtrack. It even features a rendition of Dance Macabre by Camille Saint-Saëns, which is one of my favorite classical pieces ever. And everything else on the soundtrack sort of falls in line with that sort of decadent, oppressive, just really gloomy atmospheric tone. And the game is not great. It's not anything to write home about. It's not something that you're going to go out of your way to recommend to people, but recommending the game in its, coupled with the soundtrack, trying to get somebody to play it, not as a game that's incredibly fun to play, but as an experience, as something to traverse through from start to finish and experience the story, experience this fantastic soundtrack. I can't say the soundtrack is just amazing. It is worth looking up and listening to. The problem is that it's extremely difficult to look up. I'm trying to find clips of it, even just so that SynthR and Xizor can get sort of a sampling of it. I was struggling to find it.
That was the one that you put in that was just like straight gameplay, right? That
was all I could find.
Yeah. I was wondering about that. I was like, man, it must have been hard to find the soundtrack if you had to just put in straight up gameplay of it.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't find it. That said, you can, when you purchase the game on Steam, you can, opt to purchase the soundtrack. I did. I don't often purchase soundtracks. I think Darkest Dungeon and Faster Than Light are a couple of other notable ones, but I don't often buy soundtracks. I actually went back to purchase the soundtrack for Apocalypsis. And you can actually, if you go on the Behemoth web store, you can purchase like a wood box version of the game that comes with like a soundtrack and everything. It's very fancy.
So is it not available on like Spotify or something like that?
I wasn't able to find it when I was trying to track it down.
Okay. And so the next thing on this list, even though this could have been put into a few different things on this in our topic here, is a game I love quite a bit. It's called Transistor. Now, this is made by Supergiant, He's put out like 3 sort of indie titles now. They came out with Bastion and then Transistor. I've never played Bastion myself. A lot of people love that game. Transistor is my favorite thing they've done. I played Pyre last year. Super fun game, also kind of unique. So this soundtrack is done by Darren Korb. And the 2 picks that I did were not really indicative of the overall sound and style of the soundtrack. I just thought they were kind of unique to this topic because they're a little bit different, a little bit more traditional in the sense that they're songs with vocals. So they feature a female vocalist, Ashley Barnett. So there's more like almost like a sort of smoky jazz sort of vibe to the whole soundtrack. And so these couple picks that I pulled were with her on there, and so you have these like female vocals that sound really great over this sort of atmospheric, weird, sort of, I don't know, jazzy kind of thing, like almost like a futuristic jazzy, like, club environment is what you would imagine whenever you listen to this. But the rest of the soundtrack itself, is just your typical, instrumental stuff. And a lot of it's really great. He also does, he incorporates a lot of sort of guitars into his music and stuff like that. You can tell that he approaches sort of video game soundtracks more from the standpoint of which I would if I was writing them, where it was like, I'm coming at it from a guitar first standpoint, and then he has like sort of these layered beats and stuff under it, like synthetic like drums and stuff like that. But it's a really super cool soundtrack, and that game, if you've never played it, I don't know, have either of you guys played Transistor?
I did a little bit, and I would say the music, like, I'd categorize it as like trip hop.
Yeah,
I agree.
I don't really know like weird labels that people put. I've heard of trip hop and stuff like that.
I know everything electronic. Okay, we already
Okay. Whoa.
hinted at this.
Okay, all right. Settle your dick down, son. But yeah, no, I because I pulled up a couple lines in reference to this. So, what he labeled it, acoustic frontier trip hop, and so it's like heavily sampled beats and layers and stuff like that. Then you have more of the acoustic guitar elements to it, and then like Bastion won the Spike Video Game Awards for Best Original Score back in 2011. So he's known for like really cool music and video games. He's been recognized and stuff like that. So if you haven't played Transistor, I think it's like one of the coolest like indie downloadable games that you can play. The combat system in that is one of the coolest, most original combat systems in any game I've ever played. It plays more like an old school JRPG or something like that in a lot of ways. And I love the aesthetic of it. I love everything about the vibe of this game. I mean, it's basically like a woman that lost her voice. She was a singer, and the voice, she has a voice through the sword that she finds. And the story itself is not really satisfying, but all the elements around it, like the overall just sort of things on the periphery, the little side stories and characters and stuff like that are really cool. It's a super awesome game. I love the shit out of it, and the soundtrack definitely brought it to life for me.
I would agree that the soundtrack is absolutely splendid. The game itself is great as well, but the soundtrack really does stand out, and I do agree with Matt that it's trip hop. It reminded me a lot when I first heard it of some of the work of Uncle, Massive Attack, Tricky, artists like that.
Very 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you're looking for someone to blame, fighting for air while you circle the drain. Never be sorry.
All right, so my pick for an atmospheric game is EVE Online's entire soundtrack, basically. So EVE Online, what that is, it's a game that's been around for like more than 15 years, I'd say. and it's an MMO, so it's massively multiplayer online, a lot of PvP stuff going on, and it takes place in space. So you pilot a spaceship, you go out, you can fight, do missions, mine asteroids, do whatever you want. So it's like a MMORPG, but with spaceships. And the soundtrack is just beautifully done, in my opinion. It's all ambient electronic music, which I'm a huge fan of, because you'll find out soon that I'm a huge electronic person. And it's just lots of reverb, lots of synths, lots of melodies and detuned notes and syncopated notes, like just all the synth stuff that I really love. And it just has that very 70s sort of 80s space feel that you get out of like the sci-fi genre. And it's just, I love the soundtrack. Some tracks aren't as good, but for the most part, super atmospheric and just really nice to listen to. And just sometimes I'll just listen to it every once in a while when I'm just doing something, like I'll be reading a book, or I'll just be like working away and I want to listen to it because it's just there and it's just cool. It just takes you to another place. It just fits that backdrop of being in a universe that's enormous, and there's just stars everywhere, planets everywhere. You go light speed to travel and all that stuff. It just encapsulates all the space travel stuff you would think of in a soundtrack.
Have you played it though?
Yes, I've played it.
So when did you play? I don't know much about the history of this game. So like when did EVE Online become a thing?
I think it was in like 2003, 2004, and I might have played it in 2005. And I played it for about 2 months, and it's just a huge time sink. It's just a game that wants you to keep subscribing. And that's why I didn't really care for it, but I love the music and the visuals. Everything just went together. It's just the gameplay was a grind.
Yeah, I just like I said, I don't know that much about it, but all I ever hear about that game is like all the weird stories that come out of it, like of all the players that are like super fucking dedicated to it, and then dump all these like hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars into it, and like how just like entire economies and empires get crumbled in that game, and a certain ship that was destroyed at a certain point in time is still there as like a placeholder in the game that you can go visit it from some epic war. And like people have found out where other players live that are on different factions, and they when they're going to stage a raid or something, they go and cut the power to this person's house so it fucks up their game. And I've just heard all these crazy stories about that, so I've never played it. I've barely ever looked at it. So I was just curious what your experience with it was, and how sort of the gaming soundtrack side of it related to you personally.
Well, I didn't play it enough to really get into that, and I wouldn't have anyway, but I know and familiar with all the stuff you're talking about. There is crazy history with the nutcase gamers that love this game, like the hardcore fans, because it's mostly PvP driven, and there is like a really big economy in the game that kind of coincides with like real world money. And of course those two things, like the being aggressive and having real world money together, causes people to kind of go nuts. So there's really great stories of like huge faction wars and like literal like thousands of real dollars just being vaporized in a second when they're having this huge war. Or like people have infiltrated other clans and like stolen all that clan shit and taken it away to like their clan. Like just like crazy stuff has happened in that game.
Yeah, when you hear about this game, it sounds like the most epic fucking game ever made. And then you look at a video of someone playing it, and you're like, is Clippy about to pop up and give you some hints, some tips, tricks to
it is
how to
slow.
play this fucking thing?
It is pretty slow because things happen in real time. Kind of. It just feels like you're really simulating it. Even though it's not a simulator, like flight simulator type game, it's just that's what it's just a grind. And you get these epic stories, but those stories took months. Like the one that I was talking about with like the espionage and being a spy and stealing stuff, I think that took like a year to pull off. And that's like a monthly fee to get to that point, and all that work to gain all those people's trust and all that stuff. Like that is like beyond next level shit for a video game. You know, like when I turn the game off, that's it. That's
kind of the experience like you always wanted like online video gaming to become. was this crazy shit where you get super invested in, like, you play a role, you play a character that's unique to your personality, or if you want to be a heel or some kind of person that's sabotaging something, like you're infiltrating another, like all the things you hear about that game, it sounds like the most fascinating game ever, and then you look at it and you're like, what is this fucking pile of shit?
No, it's funny that you have that perception, because that's true. I never really thought about that. It's just I've loved the soundtrack. I love the visuals of the game. The stories are great, but you're right. Like, the game itself is a huge time sink. But I think that's why it's persevered for like I don't know how many years it's been. Like I said, like over 15, but it's persevered that long, where people love it to the point where they're like probably living in it and obsessed with it.
On a similar note, similar vein, while I never played EVE Online, I do feel compelled to give a shout out to Elite Dangerous. While we're on the subject of space and great soundtracks, so the cool thing about Elite Dangerous, it can be a little boring. It does start to get kind of slow and you run out of things to do. It is sort of simmy in a way. Like, there's a lot of satisfaction just in doing something as simple as flying up to a space station and having to, go into your menu and request docking, and then you're cleared to land in this one, and you have to, navigate your way inside. And there's a lot of immersion. The game just sort of starts. It's not something you have to build up to. You're playing it from the moment that you sit down and you start, like, flying around in your ship and doing all these things. But there is definitely something to be said for just space trucking and just, like, hauling goods from, like, one system to another, while this great, like, soft soundtrack plays. The other cool thing about that game that was so neat is that there were actually radio stations. So it was like a little script that you could run in the background so that you would tune into, people would go and make these radio stations like Sidewinder Radio, and I forget some of the other ones, but it was specifically dedicated for this game. It would play sort of ambient or electronic ambient kind of music, like artists like Stellar Drone and Carbon Based Life Forms and Solar Fields. So it's keeping with that sort of space ambient electronic kind of theme that the soundtrack has. But then you've also got like this custom made content where people are like making, fake commercials for like ships and come on down to Bill's, shipyard or whatever it was. Cool. And it was such a neat experience to sort of have that extra like player component. But I think that is sort of I'm sure EVE Online is similar in that respect of like it's a sandbox and you're giving the player base is the ones that are having to come up with things to do. The first Star Wars MMO, Star Wars Galaxies, way back in the day, that's all there was the end game for that was I have the best stuff in the game. I'm going to go RP, or I'm going to go take over this outpost, or I'm going to go find this weaponsmith vendor and I'm going to buy the gun off his vendor and then I'm going to shoot him with it because he's a rebel piece of shit. There was nothing to do in the game. Anything that you wanted to go and do was something you had to come up with. And I think that Elite Dangerous is similar in that respect, and it seems as if EVE Online is the same.
Well, it seems like Star Citizen is primed to be the next sort of big, epic game that tries to combine all these elements from all these other stuff like EVE Online and stuff like that. It seems
when
like
the fuck's that coming out?
Exactly. That is the craziest fucking thing that we don't need to get on a tangent here, but yeah, that game is super fucking crazy and like its ambition and what it's trying to do. It seems like the ultimate game, but again, when is it coming out? It has millions and millions of dollars of funding, but I don't know. So it looks super appealing every time I look into it. I'm like, this looks cool, but it just seems like a little chunk of what you would want. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually possible to deliver on something on the scale that you would expect from something like that.
All All right, so moving on to licensed music and licensed game soundtracks. Another longtime friend of all of ours, Evan, offered up the suggestion of the PlayStation reboot of Road Rash. Always stands out. He says it had a mashup of early 90s grunge and alternative rock to be a bit more with the times. The acoustic guitar that runs in the background. Oh, never mind. That's him talking about Dead Red Machine. This fucking guy can't get his thoughts cohesive. It's those dreadlocks. They're weighing down his head.
Yeah, they're squeezing his brain juice out. That's what powers his fucking dreadlocks, is the brain juice being squeezed out.
But I don't really remember the PlayStation reboot of Road Rash, so what you guys have to say on it is...
Yeah, I identify with this pick myself. I loved Road Rash back in the day. It was, it's a form of car combat, so it's in our wheelhouse. I like the riding up beside a motorcycle and kicking them and all that shit. But the soundtrack really was cool. It was cool at the time. I love my second love, other than like prog rock and prog metal, is 90s music, just all of it, and specifically 90s grunge stuff and alternative rock and stuff from that era. And Soundgarden was definitely a phenomenal band. And every time I hear Rusty Cage and Outshined by Soundgarden on the radio or wherever, I always think about this game. Like those two songs in particular. I can't even remember the rest of the licensed music was on there. Maybe I should have pulled it up. But yeah, those two songs in particular really stood out to me, and they always make me think of that game specifically when I hear them. All right, so as far as licensed video game soundtracks go, I'm not a big fan of that per se, although I do think there's perfectly great examples of how it works. And everyone wants to cite, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 back in the day is like a phenomenal a representation of licensed music in a video game. And there are others, but I think the one that usually comes to mind for most people is like GTA. So you had like GTA Vice City and because it was all 80s themed. So it was just a bunch of, your stereotypical pop culture, popular music from that era, which everyone loves that kind of stuff, even if it's just ironically. And so, obviously if you're going to set a game in the 80s, you're going to take the most iconic music from that time and put it into a game. But where I'm like, I kind of go back and forth on this is like, when people tell me that like, oh, my favorite video game soundtrack is, some Tony Hawk or some GTA, it's like, well, I mean, you're just telling me that you just like listen to the radio at that point. It's not original works. And even racing games do this too, where they just pull in, the licensed music while you're racing around. And I always turn that off and listen to my own music, which is kind of fun. But yeah, so I'm kind of two minds where, that's why I didn't want to spend a ton of time talking about licensed music in video games. I'm even when I used to play in a band and stuff back in the day, like I never wanted to do cover songs. I always just wanted to play original music because I just think that's the best representation of your body of work. And GTA is different in that you're driving around in the car. So obviously you're flipping through radio stations. So it makes sense that you're playing music from that time through a radio in your car. But Brian, you had some counterpoints to my argument that licensed music isn't the most interesting way to approach a video game soundtrack.
Yeah, I did want to disagree. Tell you why you're fucking stupid. So in particular, we'll use Grand Theft Auto 5 as an example. It's a very popular example. There's tons of blockbuster, artists on it, very famous artists who people know, right? But it was also a really great opportunity as an outlet for some lesser known acts. Battle tapes really stood out to me. It was just something I heard on the radio in passing in the game. And, I went to go find out more about the band. And hey, what do you know? They've got albums and EPs, and they're absolutely fantastic. Especially in the day and age of something as fantastic as Spotify, where we're not sitting around waiting for the radio to play something good. We can immediately go out and have access to it and immediately listen to it. And then that is sort of the rabbit hole that leads us to other things that we end up liking. And so I think it's really valuable when it's used effectively. And I think games like Grand Theft Auto or Crackdown or some of these other games that have like radio stations in cars are a great opportunity for that. Same with Saints Row. It was a very pleasing experience for me to be playing Saints Row, and like, you put on the metal station, like Amon Amarth comes on, and you're like, oh shit, this is my jam. And it's cool. It has that immersive experience and the immersive effect to it.
Yeah, there's only been one example of that for me. What was the Hong Kong open world game?
Sleeping Dogs.
Sleeping Dogs, yeah. Where I turned on the station and they were actually playing one of my favorite bands, Dream Theater, and I was like, oh shit, here we go. And you get, especially if it's music you like, you get kind of hyped and you get excited when it's like, oh, it's in the video game that I'm playing and that I like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course you listen to Dream Theater.
They're only the greatest band ever, but anyway.
But I think that's what I enjoy about some licensed soundtracks. And I think there's room for it to be done correctly. Another example, the first Crackdown game featured a song by sort of a lesser known European synth pop band, Mind in a Box. It's a great song. It's a great band. But it was just really strange to sort of see them on this soundtrack in the background. And, it makes a significant difference to some of these smaller artists who are able to get onto soundtracks. The first Gran Turismo soundtrack featured Cubanate, which is a rather obscure mid-90s industrial band. That's an oversimplification. Two very talented, incredibly proficient musicians in Cubanate, and Mark Heel and Phil Berry, that blended, the aggro, in-your-face guitar sound that was really popular in North America at the time, as far as industrial music goes, with some of the more heavy-hitting electronic bass that you would find really popular in the EBM scene in Northern Europe at the time. So it's this really great combination of those two things, and together, when you put them together, you end up with a song. The song from the Gran Turismo 1 soundtrack was an instrumental version of their song Oxyacetylene. And man, let me tell you, not only is that song next level when it comes to energy and hype, but all of their music is just next level when it comes to energy and hype and making you want to speed down a road. And I mean, it made such an impact on them that, I mean, it's listed on their Wikipedia page as like a high point for their success as a band. So I think it's a really great opportunity for smaller bands to sort of get their name out there. And I wish that going forward, companies that put together licensed soundtracks would do that more often, take more of a chance on some smaller acts. I mean, especially they're easy to find with something like Spotify or iTunes Music or YouTube or whatever. And yeah, I just think it's a really great thing that's maybe not used enough at times.
Yeah, another thought I had while you were talking, you mentioned Saints, and I haven't looked in a while, but I always wanted to go back and try to find the original Saints Row. They had this talk radio station on there. I haven't heard it in years. I don't remember. It just always stands out to me as something I think about when I think about video game, sort of like Grand Theft Auto style video games, and being able to switch to the radio. And I know other Grand Theft Auto games have done like a talk radio kind of thing too, but for whatever reason, the one in that game was super funny, and I don't even remember what they were talking about or what they were saying. I just always remember that. I tried to look it up on YouTube to see if someone just had like, themselves just like sitting in a car listening to that. So I want to revisit that at some point and see if it's as great as I remembered. And then another thing when you're talking, the original Xbox 2, I believe, but maybe it was the 360. I can't even remember now. Where you could put your CDs in and rip them to the hard drive, and so you could basically play your own music to every fucking game. And so you could make your own video game soundtrack if you wanted to. Like, that was my favorite thing to do when playing racing games.
Yeah.
Was just play my own music. And so, like, what do you guys think about that? Is like, you think it like kind of like, is that a, I mean, obviously it's a valid way. You can play a game however you want, listen to music however you want, but it's it's sometimes in a way it feels like almost insulting to like put your own music, like, oh, well, your shit's not good enough for me and I'm just gonna listen to my own shit. But at the same time, like, if you're just playing somewhere the story or whatever doesn't really matter, I think it's kind of totally valid to just put your own music in and just kind of, like, when you're just driving a racing game, it doesn't matter. The music doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily add to the gameplay. So what do you guys think about that?
I only really did it for a racing game or a game that had licensed music I didn't want to listen to. So like some of the Burnout games I didn't like, but usually I'll stick with like the in-game music just for the experience. Like RPGs, I wouldn't do it, and stuff like that. But it's mainly racing, because racing doesn't, like, the music's just kind of there. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really drive the game like an RPG does or anything. You know, it's not emotional. Yeah. It's just there.
That idea that you can have your own sort of entertainment layered on top of something else, because, you know, not all games like require your like a 100% attention span all the time. You know, there's grindy bullshit things that you have to do. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Where I even like games, like the reason why I was enjoying playing Anthem so much over the last week is it was that game for me where I'm like, I'm not fully invested in it. I'm just kind of like doing other things while I'm playing it because I don't really care about all the stuff on the periphery. So yeah, that's a totally interesting topic.
And just very quickly on that note, I think that some games that have really great soundtracks can be enhanced. You can certainly spice it up by putting your own soundtrack on. Just as an example, a game that if you've played it, I'm sure you have not played it just a little bit, you've played it a lot, is Diablo 3, which we're going to talk about later. But again, it has a great soundtrack, but you know, you're playing it so much. Sometimes it's fun to just like turn it off and put on like Iron Maiden and like blend through a million demons and have that experience.
Exactly. Yeah, I do that too with certain games like that, where it's just like when you're doing repetitive stuff, just going through the motions because you're just grinding out and you just want loot. I do that all the time.
It's no longer about immersion at that point, right? You're kind of just like, I'm just grinding the shit out of this, so I need something to distract me.
Like, I can't think of any specific examples. I want to say that maybe even like Ghost Recon Wildlands was like this, where I'm trying to be fully immersed and like I'm going like creeping into a base and I'm being super stealth, and I want to be able to hear all the sounds around me, like footsteps and stuff like that. So I'll just turn the music completely off because I just want to hear the in-game audio. I don't want to hear like music or whatever else. And there's certain games like Battlefield, when I'm playing that online, sometimes I'll turn the music off because like I'm trying to take this super serious and I want to be immersed in the world and I want to be able to identify all the sound effects going on around me. And so when you have like music layered on, it's not really necessary in a multiplayer game. Sometimes I'll just turn that off because I just want to be able to hear more of the actual in-game sounds.
Yeah, that's true. I sometimes turn the music down too, and I'll boost like the ambient sounds or the sound effects because I'd rather have that stuff than the music. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
You're a liar. Fuck you.
All right, so that concludes part one of our video game music appreciation. Tune in next week for part two, where we delve into further topics we weren't able to get to because we ran super long. But now we're going to move into the what the fuck we're playing. So, SynthR, you're going to start this topic off with some more Crackdown bullshit. I don't know why you're still talking about this game, but go ahead.
Well, no, it's because I wanted to give like a really good review for it. And basically what I'm going to say is it took me 12 hours to beat this game. I'd give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Every fucking boss that you fight is in a mech suit. There's like zero variety. Some of the achievements are busted. Notably, one of the ones where it's just like kill every boss and every sub boss that there is in the game. It's stuck at 98%. So that's fucked. They can't even get that shit right. When you're capturing like radio towers and all this other shit, You get the same dialogue every single time. Like they couldn't even record like 12 separate things for the 12 different radio towers that you take over. Like it's just failed attempt. Okay. I played the game to completion, failed attempt. Why'd this game take so fucking long? What a shitty first party game.
Could you literally not find anything else to play but this fucking trash?
Well,
I mean,
funny you
literally
ask,
anything.
because while I was playing that, I did beat Guacamelee 2, and I just need to go back and clean it up for 100%, which is a great game. Recommend it. I've talked about it several times on the podcast. Play it. Play that goddamn game. Crackdown 3, skip it. Skip that shit.
And what platform did you say you played Guacamelee 2 on?
So Guacamelee 2 is on the Xbox One, but I believe it's also on PS4 and the Switch.
So did you 100% it for the achievements?
Not yet. I got to go back. It's super hard. So I beat the game, and I feel like the game was difficult, but it wasn't too bad compared to the first one. But now that I have to go and mop up the extra stuff to get the 100%, this stuff I got to do now is like super fucking hard compared to the first game.
So
like,
why do it? Why not just move on with your life?
I don't know. I really like the game. I really like the game, and when I love it, I want to like completely do it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm that way with certain games, but I've completely left the achievement whore life behind. I cannot be bothered to do that kind of mop up shit in video games anymore. So it's sad to see that you fall from grace and you're still a slave to the drug.
But I'm not. I'm just going to do it because I like that sense of completion and kind of putting a stamp on it saying like, I'm done with this game. I'm done. Because I'm not going to replay it on the hardest difficulty to get all the achievements. I'm just going back to just make sure all the areas are 100%.
Yeah,
That's
sure
it.
you are. Okay,
Anyway.
moving on to Red Dead Online. Now we played Red Dead Online, the new update that came out last week. It was supposed to fix a lot of the perceived problems with the game. A lot of it was stuff that I didn't see as a problem. I don't think our friend group that plays the game sees it as a problem, like griefing, stuff like that. So this was this was the first major update to the beta. I don't know why the game's still in beta all this time after. But we had a good time with it. The game's not broken anymore. That's good news. Like it was the fucking week before when we played, and it was a fucking shit show. Which was fun in its own right. That's probably one of my favorite experiences playing Red Dead Online was when it was just a complete fucking shit show. But yeah, so, I mean, some of the updates, like I didn't really delve into everything fully, because when we play, we always just fuck around. But the main thing to sort of test out was how you appear, how players and posses appear on the map. Now you don't show up unless you're really causing a bunch of chaos, so people can't just like seek you out and hunt you. You kind of vaguely appear on the mini map and even on the overhead map, depending on how much chaos and how much trouble you're causing in the world. And then if you're close by, we ran down all the changes to Red Dead Online a couple weeks ago, so I don't want to get too far into that. But the main thing I wanted to test out, and we didn't test it out fully, but we had some fun with it, was the new ability to have bounties on you, like bounty hunters come after you. So the way it works is once you get over $10 in bounties on your head, then the bounty hunters will start coming after you. And it seems like they only come in at you after every 10, 15 minutes or so. But then after that, so you get to $10, that's the bounty on your head, and then you get to 20. So I'm guessing that's every $10 level is kind of where it starts to escalate. So once you get to 20, which is the highest we got it to that night, because it takes a minute to actually get there. So I'm guessing like 20, 30. I don't even know the cap for it. But we didn't fully test, like, if we had multiple people in the posse that also had bounties on their heads, $10, $20, $30, if multiple bounty hunters would just be coming in all the time trying to fight us. So I want to fully break that system, which is what I want to do tomorrow night maybe. But it's kind of cool. It's a new wrinkle to add to the video game. I mean, it doesn't really change all that much. I mean, we kind of had fun the other night where I guess the train is working in the multiplayer now. They kind of just travels around. You can jump off. So I had a bounty on my head, and we all jumped on the train as it was stopped at like roads, and so bounty hunters were coming in on. They're all AI driven, and so we're fighting them while we're riding on a moving train. So it kind of felt cool. It was a cool little thing, and we fucked around on the train all night and did dumb shit like we always do. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like the update was pretty cool. Like it added elements that I think should be in there. But it seems like the overall player base is kind of unhappy and rebelling against this for various reasons. I don't really want to delve too far into it here, but people are saying that the hunting rewards have been sort of downgraded, and there's certain daily challenges where it actually encourages griefing, and I don't know. There's a lot of like little nitty gritty details about this that I don't think are super relevant to the way we play the game, where we just kind of roll with whatever happens. And like, we actually like to grief people sometimes. But the small updates they have made where, you can parlay instantly. And then if you're the posse leader, you can also relay that parlay to the people in your posse. So if someone kills you instantly, you can parlay with them. And then you can say, like, add this parlay to the other members of my posse. So you can just immediately shut down any like long-term griefing. So I think this is the best way to approach it. I don't know why all these fucking babies are out here complaining about griefing in a goddamn Rockstar online game. But whatever, it is what it is. But I think the steps they made in that regard are perfectly valid and great. But everyone's still fucking complaining about griefing and shit. So I don't really understand what's going on. But it's fun. I mean, there's some new wrinkles and some new aspects of it that we need to play around with, and see how far we can push it, and ultimately get a better sense of what all this update has brought to the game. But moving on from Red Dead, I want to talk about the new hottest thing, which is Anthem. As much as 2 or 3 years ago, this game was going to come out and it was going to be a hot fucking mess. And it was going to be one of those games where, it's going to have a redemption arc where it launches bad, just like Destiny, just like The Division, just like all these fucking games, just like every AAA fucking game does now, where it launches broken as shit. And then, 6 months from now, a year from now it's good. And so why did we buy it at $60? I don't know. Well, I didn't buy it. I fucking red boxed it like I've been doing a lot of these games now, because I'm not pre-ordering shit anymore. But Anthem, man, it's all over the place. It's what I will say about from a positive standpoint is that the gameplay is super fun. The gameplay is really fun. Like the controls. So I'm playing it on PS4, a PS4 Pro. I got it just because I had a buddy, the good friend of mine, that was playing on there, and I just kind of wanted to play with him. And the controls are super good, and the gameplay is super fun. I think it takes the best aspects of, like, basically BioWare's sort of gameplay. I think Andromeda was fun from a gameplay standpoint, and this kind of builds upon that. I mean, ultimately, what the game feels like is Mass Effect 3's multiplayer mode, and they had a multiplayer in Andromeda too. I didn't think it quite hit the same beats and was as well received as the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. But that's a way to sort of just imagine how this game plays. Like, it's like a 4-player co-op sort of Mass Effect game. And, this is like a weird game for me where, like, I already had low expectations for it. I already wasn't going to be, I knew I wasn't going to be super invested in it, especially because I started on the PlayStation, and I know I'll probably pick it up eventually on the Xbox or the PC to play with some of you guys. So I wasn't really that invested in it regardless. But it has, it has a lot of, like, pluses and minuses. Like I said, the gameplay and all that is really great. I was playing the Storm class because I was kind of debating beforehand, like, which class I should play. I was kind of basing it off like Destiny and stuff like that, where I usually tend to play like a tankier class, like I want to play like the hardest class. Like, what is the hardest character class to play as? And I want to do that. But no, I was just like, because I'm playing it casually, I just rented this for a few nights. I just want to play something that's super fun. So I went with the Storm class, where you're basically like this sci-fi wizard that's raining down ice and fire and lightning attacks and stuff like that. And it's super fucking satisfying. Like, honestly, even sitting here thinking about it right now, I'm just like, I want to go rent it again and play it because I just want to do that. Like, the ability that you have with that class to sort of hover in the air and rain down all these attacks and shoot people and stuff like that is super cool. So I unlocked one other javelin class, and I didn't play. I unlocked the Colossus because I wanted to see, but I never played as it. I just kept playing as a Storm class because it was super fun. So, I will say I'm not gonna totally speak on this game authoritatively because I just rented it. I was playing it very casually. I didn't finish the game. I didn't get to the end game. I don't know what the end game looks like. I mean, I've seen people talk about it, but I don't really know. So there's a lot of, everyone out here that's reviewing the game that's playing it right now, they have a ton of problems with it. And so, like I said, I've been watching all the people that played this game beforehand, because it launched a week early for all the people that wanted to pay for like the fucking bullshit EA premium Origin access bullshit, which is a side I could go down where, like, I don't know why people are paying more to beta test these fucking games, because the game had a quote unquote day one patch that was going to come out when the actual release date was, where, the normal people are just paying the $60 to pick the game up on day one, quote unquote. They were basically getting the initial product, like that the BioWare wanted to put out, EA wanted to put out, which is really dumb. Because you basically told all these people that they could pay more to just have a shittier experience, and that doesn't make much sense to me. But that's EA's business practice. So I came onto it after a lot of the initial problems and grievance points were slightly addressed. But like I said, I just have like a weird view of the game where, like I said, I was playing it casually, and a lot of the problems I was already aware of ahead of time, so I was just kind of prepared for them, and they didn't bother me. Like, people were complaining about the loading screens and stuff like that in the game, and sure, it's annoying, but like, I don't know, I'm just used to loading screens in games, and it's not that big of a deal to me. I mean, I just pick up my phone and check my notifications in the loading screen, so it's almost like a cool break for a second. But there's people have issues with the fact that you can't change your loadout or your weapons mid-mission without going into a huge loading screen and coming back out of it and all this other stuff. And I don't know, I didn't have that much of an issue with loading screens overall. Like, I kind of found the weapon classes and things that I thought I would like early on and just kind of stuck with those. And I would just experiment with different weapons in between missions, or like I would change my loadout in between missions. And so I just kind of rolled with the punches on that. I understand that's a huge flaw in the game that can be addressed. But other stuff, it's a BioWare game. I mean, you expect this crazy story, and while that's perfectly valid, I paid attention the first night I played the game. I was really like kind of engaged and was trying to see, but I was just sitting there being like, can I really? I can't get disengaged with yet another sci-fi universe video game lore and all this stuff. It was just, like I said, I was half committed to the game anyway, so I didn't really care about the story. The dialogue choices are pretty mundane and don't really impact anything. At a certain point, I was just kind of picking the most sarcastic choice between one or the other, even though that's not even what your character says, and it's just kind of bullshit. So it's structured just like Destiny, just like any of these other loot shoot games, these looter shooters, where you're just going through, you're leveling up your character, and you're getting loot, and you're equipping different things and different abilities and stuff like that. And all that stuff is pretty fun. It's pretty, it's standard fare, but it works. It's fine. But none of it is super exciting. I mean, you're not like changing out all these crazy armor pieces on your javelins, which kind of sucks because, like, I think like the way I play Destiny is like I want all the armor sets, I want to look cool. I want to change out all these different aspects of it. So that's like kind of lackluster here. And the biggest flaw of the game for me is that the loot system is just complete garbage. It's just awful. Like you're playing so the Division, for instance, for example, is it's another one of these like games as a service, grindy games, and you have these realistic weapons, and that's fine, because it's a more grounded experience. But when you play a sci-fi game, like something like this, like you want these crazy weapons, you want these over-the-top weapons. I want a fucking assault rifle that shoots demon hamsters that eat your fucking face off, or whatever you can come up with. Just like give me something cool that feels unique. And all the guns in this game are just super standard and boring. And it's just like, oh, I got another sniper rifle, and there's a couple variations of it. And like I haven't played, I haven't beat the game. I haven't played to the end game to see, maybe there's some cool shit that opens up with the Grandmaster stuff in this, like Grandmaster tier loot and stuff like that. So like I said, I don't want to speak completely authoritatively about this game, but the loot system is pretty boring and just uninspired. Even guns within the same class, like multiple assault rifles and stuff like that, like they all even just look the same, even though they're kind of different. And the sort of bonus rolls that you get on some of these, like certain perks that you would get, like they're just like some of them don't even make sense to the gun that they're on. And I don't know, it's just like super boring. I'm just like, eh. And early on, I just found like, yeah, I kind of like a marksman rifle, like DMR type thing. So I'm just going to use one of those at any given point, and maybe I'll change out my secondary weapon. But yeah, the weapons and the loot are just like super boring. It's just super straightforward, and it's very disappointing because, like I said, I come to this wanting something way more interesting, and even Destiny delivers on that. But just the world itself, and the structure of the game, is basically just like Destiny and all this other stuff, where you have Fort Tarsus, which is basically like the tower in Destiny, where you come back, and this is where you speak to all the vendors and talk to all the different characters that are going to give you quests and story missions and all this stuff. And you get in dialogue with them, and there's these little small cutscenes and stuff like that. And it's all fine. I mean, like I said, I wasn't paying attention to the lore and the story. But what did occur to me, like after a night of playing this game, is that like, why the fuck was this game not a Star Wars game or a Mass Effect spinoff? I mean, BioWare has made Star Wars games that have went on to become canon, and so they're super used to dealing in that universe. And EA has the Star Wars license. And I don't know, even though Mass Effect, the brand has been tarnished a bit with Andromeda, like if you would have told me this was like a weird Mass Effect spinoff, like set in that universe, just maybe somewhere random that didn't necessarily connect to the main story or anything like that, like I would have been super invested in this. I would have been super involved. I mean the main sort of hook of this game is that you have the javelins which fly around like Iron Man, and that's super cool, and it feels good to fly around, even though they could tweak it a little bit where as you sort of dip in your flight patterns, that's when you sort of gain you cool your jets, as it were. Like you have this like meter that's like you're overheating while you're in your suit, and you can fly in waterfalls and near water and stuff and like cool it off temporarily. And if you kind of go up and drop down with your flight patterns, you can sort of cool your engines, but you can't really just like fly around as unimpeded as you would think, especially when you're like on a mission and you're like, get to this waypoint and you got to fly there. And it's like, you might have to drop down once or twice to like cool your engines, cool your suit off to be able to take off again. And it's kind of annoying, but the flight and like I said, the controls and everything feel super great. But the world overall just kind of, I don't know, it feels uninspired. There's not a lot of variety in the aesthetics of the world. I mean, I like lush jungle environments in a video game, and this is kind of like a weird sci-fi world, but just everything just feels kind of hollow, because everywhere I go, certain caverns you can go into, and there maybe you find some ruins over here, but it just kind of, in a way, it feels like kind of uninspired. And it definitely does not look as good as it did when they showed it off. I think it was last year, or maybe even the year before. I don't even remember, at E3, when they showed this really elaborate vertical slice of the game, where they just made it look like the greatest game you've ever played. Like, just graphically, it looked insane. And even at the time, I was like, there is no way that this game is going to launch and look that good. And, I've been tarnished by Red Dead Redemption 2 as far as graphics and how impressive these AAA titles can be. But it looks fine. It looks good enough, but it's definitely not a head turner. And yeah, there's a lot of other elements. Like I said, I've been playing this game as a sort of second screen experience. Like, I was just chatting with my bro and in the party chat, like, while we're playing. Like, I'm not really even, I'm like half paying attention. I'm just like, I don't know. It's one of those games. It's just another video game. Go to the waypoint, kill some dudes, and like, oh, maybe hold this point, stand in this circle, and while waves of enemies move in, and let's mix it up. You got to pick up the bloobity blop and put it in the goppity glook, and that'll further your progress through the world. And so, just like, even from a gameplay perspective, it's just kind of boring in that sense. I mean, that's not indicative to Anthem per se. That's just kind of a video game problem once you introduce combat. It's just like, what do you do to make the combat more interesting, to get to point? And so, like, I'm just kind of moving through here. I'm just enjoying the combat, and I'm just like, I don't know, man, just point me in a direction, let me shoot dudes and stuff like that, and it's fun and whatever. But it's even some of the aspects of like being a social game, I'm just like, I don't think this works, because you go back to Fort Tarsus, which is your tower from Destiny, and people are like involved in their own separate little dialogue things, and there's like, trying to pick up on the story point, and you're talking to them, and they're like, whoa, wait, I gotta listen to this. And so it's this very disconnected thing. Like, I almost think the initial story mode, the single player going through, initially you should just maybe play it by yourself. Like, I don't know, because that's the only way you can sort of take it at your own pace and really appreciate and take in the story and all the lore and sort of explore Fort Tarsus, as it were. Even though it's not that big of a deal, but it just feels like it's a co-op game. It's just like, it doesn't feel like you should play it that way. Like, I was mostly playing it solo, and then, like I said, I played it with a friend and we were talking to party chat. But it feels like the end game is where you want to like really collaborate with other people and like do the hard shit. But overall, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I had fun playing it, but like I said, I had low expectations. It's not the game I wanted it to be, but it's exactly the game I expected. And while there are a lot of faults and a lot of hangups that people have with it, because I watched a ton of videos before I even played the game, just like seeing what people thought about it. Because I didn't pick it up day one. I didn't pay for the fucking early access bullshit, and so I already had a good sense of how it was going to be. But nothing like really turned me off from it. It was just kind of like, meh. This is like meh. This is what we can expect from a fucking EA game now, like a AAA game. It's just like, it comes out and there's like, please play it. It works, kind of. There's this whole thing that's been coming out of the past 24 hours or so, where the game is like just crashing people's PlayStation 4s and stuff. And it's just like, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, that's a goddamn shame. Because I was looking forward to maybe playing it, but I knew right away that it wasn't going to be a day one purchase. So maybe it will mature into something great, like you were saying before. But there's other shit to play right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's a game that I'll pick it up again later on, like maybe if the summer is slow and the game goes on sale for like $20 or something, and we're all just like, hey, you want to play some Anthem? I mean, just playing through the single player or single player co-op campaign, however you want to handle it. I mean, you can play the game solo if you want to, like literally only you play it and play the missions, which would be kind of hard, but it's not impossible. I did that initially. The first couple missions, I just wanted to see what that felt like. And it was pretty fun, but I picked that game up to play co-op. And so, yeah, I'm going to pick it up again later on, like down the road when it's better, when it's cheaper. And it's just something we want to just fuck off with for a few nights or whatever. I mean, whatever the game is, I don't know. Yeah, it's totally, like I said, it's totally fun for just to fuck off whatever game. Like I said, I rented it. I got what I wanted out of it. I didn't invest that much time or money into it. I probably spent like maybe 15 hours, maybe 20 with it. And it's just fine, man. Like that's all I can say about the game. Is just fine. Like it's exactly what you expect if you pay close attention to these kind of AAA releases. And it's sad because, like, God damn it, man. Like, I love BioWare. I think we all do. And like I just don't. This is not what they should be putting out. This is not the game they should be making. And I understand, getting back to what I was saying a few minutes ago about why wasn't this a Star Wars game? Why wasn't this a Mass Effect spinoff? Because it would have sold well, and everyone would have been way more invested in it. But I understand studios want to create something new. They get tired of, I understand BioWare doesn't want to get into the whole Bethesda sort of loophole of just like, we got to put out Fallout, we got to put out Elder Scrolls, and then we got to put out Fallout, and we got to put Elder Scrolls. They don't want to do Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Mass Effect. But at the same time, I mean, like I said, especially with BioWare being able to work with, having been able to work with Star Wars in the past, and EA having that license, I just like for one part of me is just like I would have been super invested in this if it had just been painted with a different brush, if you'd have just and maybe they didn't want to put out another half-assed fucking Star Wars game because fucking Christ Almighty, EA with their fucking Star Wars license and all the fucking horse shit that's caused, but. Man, this could have been dressed up in a way that I think would have made people super invested in it. And like I said, the core gameplay loop is there, the 30 seconds of fun, the loot shoot, controls feel great, feels cool to run into a mission and shoot shit with people, and all that's there, but it's not anything new or original. It's not anything inspiring. It's just lackluster, and there's plenty of problems with the game. There's I had the game crash on me a couple times. At least you can join back into a mission with other people that you're playing with if you crash out. At least they did that, because if they didn't do that, that's fucking horse shit. But it's not what it should be, and we all knew that. Everyone fucking knew that pays attention to this stuff. That's why none of my friends bought it. Everyone was excited for it, or at least thought they wanted to be, but no one bought it because we all knew the shit show it was going to be when it came out. And so that's fucking Anthem.
All right, All right, let's move into the Q&As for this week. If you have any questions you want to ask us, have an interesting topic that you want to pitch or want to be part of the show, send us an email at bastardsgamingnetwork@gmail.com or just message us on the Bastards of Gaming Facebook group. So, question number 1 comes to us from Norman Fetus, who asks, what's your favorite gaming peripheral?
Yeah, I don't... this one's kind of weird for me. Like, I have a couple things that jump to mind, but I don't know if they're, like, really great. I don't know. But okay, so the thing that jumps to mind for me is that I think about... I know everyone's going to hate me and think I'm a weirdo for saying this, but the NVIDIA 3D stuff from about like 6 years ago, I fucking loved that shit. 3D gaming, I love 3D shit. I'm sorry, I still have a 3D TV in my gaming setup so I can watch movies and play the occasional game. I don't utilize it as much anymore because it's a lot of the Blu-rays and video games don't support it anymore, even though there's some people out there that are modding this stuff into video games. But I was all in on that shit for a while there, and I still love it. I think it's like just a cool element to it. It's kind of like, like VR is like the ultimate example of how to do like 3D, because basically, VR is essentially 3D. I mean, walking around in a 3D environment. So it's the same thing, but you're
Tell us more. Tell us more about the science behind.
Yeah,
this.
I'm gonna break down the science of it. 3D is 3D. It's in 3 dimensions. It's a break from the 2 dimensions that you're used to. Okay, we're in the 3rd dimension. This is the future, and you're all gonna fucking love it, and you're all gonna buy these products, and then it's gonna die out very quickly because we just wanted you to buy a new TV, and that's basically what we wanted you to do. And so I was a fucking sucker that bought into all that fucking shit. Because I'm an asshole and I just like new technology. I love fucking playing with new tech. But I still think like 3D games were super. It's just a super cool element to add to it. And there's a lot of games like playing the original Metro games. I played those in 3D, and it just, like I said, I know it's dumb. I know it's dumb. You can make fun of me all you want. Like, I'm in a super rare, less than 1% minority on the 3D gaming thing, but I was all in on it, and I still like it. And I still think it's cool because like I love having like fucking particle effects and things like jump out at me. It just has a super cool level of immersion that if you're like maybe super high or super drunk and you're playing a game, you're like, whoa, the thing flew at my face and it looks cool. And
you just use this for fucking porn. That's all you do.
Well,
you just like things flying at your face.
We won't get into that. Maybe one day we'll talk about VR porn.
Any listeners take note that might work for major corporations. Xizor is a corporate shill. He is a void. He is hollow inside. You can fill him with whatever flavor you want, and he will talk about how great it is. Apex Legends, he's just giving that shit out for free. He just gives that ass up. He didn't even care.
Hey, I played it for like 2 weeks. All right, I'm over it. Okay.
You record this podcast on your knees, don't you?
Yeah. I got fucking Bobby Kotick over here with his dick in my face. I'm just like, shit tastes good. Let me pump up that new fucking blackout mode for the next Call of Duty, bro.
Well, I'm gonna say I don't like 3D. I was like, it's cool, but if I go to the movies, I will not watch the movie in 3D if I don't have to. I'll just get the normal.
I always watch it in 3D if possible.
I don't know. Like after like an hour, you don't even notice it, and it's just I don't think it adds anything. I just don't like it.
It's fine. Like there's no reason to defend it. It's a fucking dead thing. It's been relegated to just like premiere like the first couple runs, like the first couple weekend runs of a movie. You go watch it in 3D if you're into that. But yeah, the technology's dead. It's over with. I still have it, and I still have all the shit that goes along with it because I'm a fucking stupid asshole that just buys all this technology.
Okay, well, my favorite peripheral, when I was playing Elite Dangerous, I started out playing it with just a basic joystick, like a Logitech 3, whatever, like $20 joystick. And then I eventually sprang for like a $35, $40-ish flight stick that had like the throttle on the left and then the main stick. And it was great. I mean, it added a level. It didn't have quite enough buttons for a game like Elite Dangerous where you have like, this button turns my lights on and this button disables my whatever. And I mean, like all these different layers of intricacy. But that was also kind of what was cool about it because like the flight stick that I had, like you could separate it so that it was like I could put the stick on the right side of the keyboard and then the throttle on the left side, and then all the buttons on the keyboard in between I can use for switching power, like power to shields, power to weapons, power to drive, or whatever. All these different buttons, and so there was a lot of like tactile satisfaction by playing with it. And I just I was disappointed when I found out that there weren't a whole lot of games that I could really use it with, like Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, EVE Online maybe, or like I think War Thunder might have support for a flight stick, maybe, I'm not sure, but it wasn't supported in Battlefield. It wasn't supported in a lot of other newer titles, and I feel like it's a missed opportunity because it is so fun to play with.
Yeah, I've always wanted to get into like a flight sim and the whole stick and all the different variety of like knobs and things that you need to power up and change the shields and this and that and stuff. Like I've always wanted to do that. I've just there's never been a game that's like pushed me in that direction.
No thanks. I already told you about the spinny shit. Motion sickness. Blech.
Your weak little tum-tum.
Yeah. Poor me. So my gaming peripheral is... I really don't use anything, but the thing I've liked the most is for my Vita, when I do play it for the older retro games, I have... It's like a grip, like a hand grip that you place the Vita into, and it helps. It just feels better in your hand, so it doesn't destroy your hands. It's like a simple $10 like frame, and you can hold it better. It's more like a controller instead of this like flat piece of whatever that's like making your fingers break. But I think that's probably like the best thing I've bought in a long time, and it's cheap. I usually don't buy other stuff. It's just I just need a controller and the game, and that's it. I don't need anything special.
I mean, is the Vita too small for you?
Yeah. I'm used to handling large things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially once you played with the Switch, it's just like, how do you feel about the Switch? Is that more?
Yeah, the Switch Switch is good, but it's not ergonomic. You know, what I mean? Like it's still flat. It's better. Because it kind of has some of the curves and stuff, and it does fit your fingers better, and it's wider, and the Vita's very small, right? So
yeah,
ergonomics. They have that in Canada, right?
Yeah, we do. It's usually like a workplace safety thing. So yeah, there you go. Okay, cool,
great.
All right, we're good. Yeah.
Next question. Let's go.
It's all good. Yeah, let Brian ramble this one off.
Oh, I don't have it pulled up. Where are the questions?
Oh, fuck. Okay, here, I'm just going to say it. Dick James asks, do you like onion and peanut butter sandwiches? And I think this person actually got this from a poll that I put up a couple weeks ago, because I get made fun of over this like constantly, that I asked people if they like an onion and peanut butter sandwich, because I do. And everyone, you guys would just be like, oh, it's fucking disgusting.
It is fucking disgusting.
Have you done it? Have you eaten it?
No.
So how do you
I
know?
live... because I have access to real food that I can go purchase. I don't have to settle for fucking shoving an onion on some bread with some peanut butter.
Yeah, I mean, this is some poverty fucking shit right here. Like, this is less than food stamps version. At least in America, we have fucking food stamps where poor people can get some decent food. I don't know what you guys are doing up there in Canada, because this is just unacceptable.
It's cuisine. The thing is that peanuts and onion go together. I'm not saying to use a cooking onion.
How?
Use a sweet
Who has
onion.
done that?
Sweet onion.
I mean, like, what do you like Thai food? Like, I don't understand where this combination comes from.
I don't know where it comes from either, but it's good.
Yeah. So what is the
origin?
What is the origin of fucking onion and peanut butter sandwich? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, I'll look into it and I'll report back. Okay, I'll write a fucking essay.
How did you find out about it?
My dad would eat them. So would his dad.
I mean,
and they're from the East Coast.
Does your dad come from fucking poor line? Like, did he serve in the...
No.
He was a merchant marine. All they had was peanut butter and fucking onions. I mean,
yeah. I'm thinking about. Oh my god. So it would have been the best draw if I could have thought of it in the moment. What's the guy's name from Game of Thrones? They survived off onions forever.
Oh, isn't it Sir Onion Master?
Let me just Google Sir Onion Master and see what comes up. It'll be the answer. Let's see here. Sir Onion Knight. Oh no, this is a Halo website. What is this? I'm using fucking Bing. This is terrible. I need to use Google. Oh my god, what the fuck? I think it's Sir Onion Knight. My god, the fucking guy's name from Game of Thrones.
Look, the point is that fucking shit that you make is vile. It's taint.
Listen.
People don't want to eat it.
Davos Seaworth. That's the guy's name.
Okay, great. Okay, can I just throw something in here? Have you ever had Kraft dinner before?
What do you mean Kraft dinner?
Okay, what do you have in the States that's like macaroni with egg powder?
Like, I didn't know if you meant the brand or like, I'm like, is that like craft beer? Like some little micro meal I go buy and hipsters love it?
Kraft mac and cheese is definitely a thing.
Okay.
I definitely like some of it.
Yes,
It's totally
yes.
legit.
I've had that as well because
so that's
I'm a
poverty.
person.
That's poverty food.
Sure.
So why the fuck are
Yeah.
you making fun of me?
But
it's not. It's not. You can't go to the grocery store and for like 30 cents get a fucking onion, peanut butter, and a sandwich, and that's your poverty food stamp dinner. You know what I mean?
No,
Onion's like
obviously.
$2, peanut butter's like $4, and a loaf of bread here is $3. So it's like a $10 fucking sandwich.
Yeah, but that's like a bunch of meals though. So it's not you're
Yeah.
thinking about the initial
It
investment.
lasts.
And yeah, it lasts, and then so that's where it comes in.
They probably grow those fucking onions.
Okay, so I have to do a cost analysis on this to see how many fucking peanut butter and onion sandwiches I can get out of a jar of peanut butter, a loaf of bread, and a sweet onion.
The point is
at least if you're gonna do like peanut butter and bananas or peanut butter and jelly, you know, you got this extra layer of cost of like jam and bananas and shit. Like an onion is probably just like, they're just like throwing them away. Like you can probably go into a grocery store dumpster and pick out the ingredients you need for your fucking sandwich.
I disagree with that, but
I mean, would you make a peanut butter and like onion jam sandwich and
not
enjoy
jam.
that and find that delicious?
No, not jam.
Why? How is that different than
Because-
taking a whole onion and just like they turn it into a marmalade of onion?
Okay, I'm thinking jam, strawberry jam. So it's like sugar, strawberries, and onion. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah, there's no onion jam. No one has an onion fucking jam. There's no fucking
It's chutney.
onion jelly that you spread
Onion
on
jam's
your
probably chutney.
You don't go to fucking
my
Waffle
God.
House. You don't go to Waffle House and put, hey, let me get that onion jelly and put it on my fucking toast here. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make sense.
You guys are fucking Neanderthals. Honestly, you guys, your palates
Oh my God.
are so underdeveloped. You have no fucking clue.
But here's the thing. I love peanut butter. I love fucking sandwiches. I love fucking onions. I love fucking onions on a burger or whatever else, like a fucking sandwich, an actual sub sandwich, you know, with all these different meats and ingredients and condiments and stuff like that. Onion definitely brings out the fucking flavor. It's a key ingredient to something. But just as like peanut butter and onion, it doesn't fucking make sense. There's no logic to it. Your ancestors were fucking clearly poor pieces of shit.
Okay, listen. This is what I'm going to say to you. Okay, you two do it. Okay, get a sweet onion, peanut butter, and get the bread and just try it.
But what
Fucking
kind
try
of
it.
onion? Like how
Sweet
do you
onion,
prepare it?
a sweet
Because-
onion. It's a white sweet onion. Don't use a fucking cooking onion that'll like make your dick cry. Okay, you just need a white onion, a white sweet onion. That's it, and just
Yeah, because
not a chunk.
I like a nice, like, you know, like grilled, like soft onion on something, you know, but
But it's not thick.
it's just to add a bit of flavor. I mean, I even eat onion rings. You know what I'm saying? Like I like onion rings. Like I don't mind just consuming a fucking onion with some fucking breading on it and shit. But this whole fucking thing of combining it with peanut butter on a sandwich, and there's
telling
not
you.
there needs to be at least a third element involved here. There needs to be peanut butter, something, and then maybe onion, and then
No.
maybe I could get on board with that. I could be
There's
like, okay,
no
the onion
version of
is
this
like
equation where it's okay.
Well, but an onion is like a layer that you add onto a sandwich, like a sub sandwich or a hamburger or whatever, or chicken sandwich. Maybe you get a chicken sandwich. So I can understand that it's like a flavor context that you add to something, but it's not like the main point. It's not like the main ingredient. That's what I can't get past here. I don't understand why.
It's not the main ingredient. The peanut butter is the main ingredient.
It is the fucking main ingredient.
The peanut butter.
There's
It's the
fucking
peanut butter.
It's fucking bread, peanut butter, and onion. It's a fucking main ingredient. What other ingredients are there?
You're picturing like the whole fucking onion on the peanut butter sandwich.
No, I'm not. I'm literally thinking of these thin sliced little pieces.
Yes,
But still,
yes,
it doesn't
that's it.
fucking make sense. How many pieces? Okay, on a normal fucking slice of bread, on a normal sandwich, you would get like how many fucking onions? How much? How many little pieces are on there? Is it diced up?
Just one ring. No, it's just a ring. Just do like
one
one
ring, and then peanut
and-
butter.
And then yes, the peanut butter.
But
and then
that's fucking dumb in and of itself because you take one bite and you pull the whole fucking ring out of the sandwich.
wait, you don't have fucking teeth? You just
No, I
gumming
have
it?
teeth.
Are you gumming it?
Like maybe I'm eating on the fucking go, and I take a bite of the sandwich, and the fucking onion comes out. One
Oh
whole
my
of it,
God.
and then I have
You
the
got
whole
bigger
fucking onion
problems
in my mouth.
You got bigger
No,
problems
you
if you
need to
can't fucking
fucking
chew your food.
Oh my God! You need to fucking dice it up, cut it up.
No.
Like goddamn, fucking. Have you not eaten a fucking sandwich? You not seen how this works? Even if you're putting rings on a sandwich, you have multiple rings. Okay,
You don't
that
need that.
maybe
It's
if
too
this
much.
happens-
It's too much.
This
See, this is the
doesn't-
thing. Okay,
this
you're
doesn't
thinking-
make fucking sense.
You're thinking about it too much. Just try it and then tell me. Okay. This is how wars start. Wars start over
I want
this
you
stuff.
to make a visual. I want you to make a visual tutorial of how to make this fucking sandwich, so
Look.
then I can make it. That's the only way I can make it.
Yeah.
Like you say, I should make
Fine,
it.
fine.
Okay, because you're telling me like, oh, just throw some onions on a peanut butter sandwich. Like I don't know your process. I don't know the ingredients you're using. Do you use Jif? Do you use fucking Peter Pan peanut butter? Do you use Chunky? I don't know what you're doing. Like I don't want to. I want to see the process, and then maybe I can be onboarded into this.
I agree. I would be willing to try it, but I need instructions.
Okay,
I want you to give me the best representation of this abomination that you can put together, and then I would be open to trying it.
Fine.
Maybe.
I'll make you two fucking idiots a how-to video because it's really hard to combine these 3 goddamn ingredients into a sandwich. I'll film myself going to the goddamn grocery store, picking up the fucking ingredients too, to show you which aisles it's in and like the size and shape and firmness of the fucking onion.
That's not going to be relative because you live in a fucking communist country up there in Canada. God knows what's happening up there. You don't have the same grocery stores and all this stuff that we have here, so it's not. I mean, just are you using like gourmet ingredients? Are you using some like sweet, like cool, like French bread to make it? Like, or are you just using this like generic shit? Like, we don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying? There could be.
Would
some,
that change anything? Honestly,
Yes,
it would.
What do you mean it would?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Brian knows.
Absolutely, it would.
Who have you ever had fucking gourmet peanut butter?
Yeah, I have, and it's fucking good.
What brand is that? I've never seen.
Sorry,
gourmet
we live in
peanut butter.
America. We have gourmet shit. You don't have fucking poor poverty shit. Like
What's the
you're
brand?
Doing, like
What's the brand name?
Jif.
See, exactly.
Adam's peanut butter comes in a glass jar. All right, it's fancy. The oil separates and everything. All right, that's fancy. You got to stir that.
That's
shit yourself.
natural.
You don't have
That's
some-
natural peanut butter. That's not gourmet.
Yeah,
that's
there you go.
natural peanut butter.
I just look at it like craft beer. It's just like this little microbrews. You just find a little small town somewhere in America, and you just find the person that's making this little homemade.
Fine. Okay. You know what? I'll go fucking harvest my own peanuts. I'll make my own motherfucking peanut butter, and that's
We're
the
not
butter we're
asking
going to
you.
use.
Crush that
Okay.
shit and make it into a butter.
We're
I
not
will.
asking you to do that. We're asking you to just give us the best representation of this fucking monstrous thing that you eat so that we can try it. I would be willing to do so, but you got to give me instructions.
Do you have peanut butter?
No.
Do you have peanut
Do
butter?
I go buy fancy bread? I don't know.
No.
Is it going to matter?
Just a fucking loaf of bread. Do you have peanut butter in the cupboard? Use that. Get a fucking onion. Sweet onion.
Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
This video is going to be fucking SynthR dumpster diving for fucking ingredients.
I mean, what do you expect from a people that I've heard that Canadians do this. You can confirm this. You go outside and you just pour maple syrup on fucking snow and then put a stick in it and then eat it.
It's called moose cream.
I bet that's what it's called. But is that true?
Yeah, do you
It's
need a
100%
fucking
true.
actual? Do you need a moose to actual trample the fucking peanuts to make them into the peanut butter? Is that the key ingredient?
That is how we do it up here because it adds like a nice smoothness to it. Because they're
Yeah,
hooves.
just a touch of the fucking
rustic.
maple syrup to give it that sweetness. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You
It binds
you
it
just
together.
I mean,
that
to be
makes sense.
fair, I've been real high before, and I've taken like a tortilla and smeared peanut butter on it, and then just a little bit of maple syrup, and then I put it in the freezer for like 45 minutes, and it was delicious.
That sounds disgusting.
How is that even? You don't get to say that to me.
Yeah, you've crossed the line. This crosses like
Yeah.
country boundaries.
Yeah, that's
this
like
is-
fucking treason.
Yeah, this is something else that we need to discuss if you're doing that kind of shit. This is like below Taco Bell standards of fucking tacos. You're talking about putting some bullshit on a tortilla shell.
It was
put it in the
delicious.
freezer. Who
Whoa,
freezes
whoa,
fucking
whoa.
tacos?
It wasn't a tortilla shell.
Fucking guarding the wall? Are you
All
waiting
right,
for the
it
fucking
was-
White Walkers? Why are you
It
doing
was a
this?
soft tortilla. I didn't say a taco shell, you dumbass. Like, do you listen when I talk? I said it was a fucking tortilla. It wasn't like, so it's soft, right? It's just like a soft bread, okay? It's delicious. You don't know what you're missing out on. And
But-
fuck you both.
What kind of tortilla is it? Is it gourmet? Is it gourmet tortilla?
No, it doesn't matter.
This is
for
white
this.
trash tacos, apparently. All right, so we're moving into the topic of the week: video game music
Yes,
appreciation.
Let me mute myself, because I'm gonna fucking laugh.
Oh man. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to do it again, so just prepare yourself. Okay?
Fine, I'll put myself on mute too. Fuck.
All right, moving into the topic of the week. Jesus fuck. All right. One more time. Okay. Moving into the topic of the week. Is that better? Is that okay?
It's perfect. Let's go. Come on, I'm on mute.
All right, sorry.
Just to transition from, granted, Casey, you were just talking about. Wait, are we using our code names on the show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our
sorry.
handles.
Yeah, our handles. All right.
Yeah,
sorry.
except yours is your fucking name. You
Shit.
The evil throws people off.
That's how they don't know it's me. All right, starting over. Okay.
Shit.
I can tell already this is going to be an editing nightmare for you.
It's
Holy
okay. I'll figure it out.
I think it's time to wrap this up.
That's
Holy
fucking
shit.
stupid as hell. Okay, the Q&A thing went on for 44 minutes. We're gonna have to.
Brian, I'm sorry we can't have you on the podcast soon.
I know.
It's too much.
This podcast is like 4 hours long now. It is ridiculous.
Like me and SynthR struggled when we did one that was like 3 hours a couple weeks ago, and we're like, oh fucking Christ. I mean, like I said, I'm up for it. I'm down for it. I don't give a shit. But it's the extra work that goes into it after the fact, and it's just like, oh my god.
Plus, I think having another person who has thoughts. I feel like the
Who has thoughts?
well, I mean, I'm not just sitting here, but I mean,
You're presuming that you have thoughts, you fucking idiot.
I mean, it needs to be it needs to dial in super close on subject matter.
But the main thing is to just, like I said, I had to learn to just not ramble, and when we did that, but
Gold star.
we
Gold
just
star.
we just talked about a fucking sandwich for God knows how long. How did we talk? How long did we talk about that fucking shit?